although we are not allowing for in-person public participation, interested community members were encouraged to submit their names and addresses to Superintendent Lang if they wanted to participate remotely under the public input portion of our meeting. During our public input session, anyone who has joined us through the GoToMeeting platform expressed interest in making a comment will be recognized by the superintendent and allowed to speak with the committee. If anyone watching this meeting live has questions or comments to share, they're encouraged to email one of us during the meeting, and we'll read their questions or comments during our second public input session at the end of the meeting. So, welcome to this meeting of the Chelmsford School Committee. For those watching at home, first of all, I want to apologize. We're a little late getting started. Initially, we had convened in executive session, and we're now just returning to regular session. As been the case of the last few meetings, a lot of what we'll be discussing tonight will involve the many different elements of the school reopening plans and hopefully answering questions that people may still have about the different learning models, staff training, and health and safety protocols. So our first order of business is approval of the minutes from our last few meetings. So the first one on the docket is our meeting on August 10th. Does anybody have any comments or corrections? I did want to mention one correction on one of the motions. Mr. Doherty's name is mistakenly put as Mr. Donahue, so I would like to just make that correction as part of the motion, just to make sure we have an official vote on that particular item. Anybody else have anything? Okay, so we'll take a motion.
I recommend that the school committee approve the minutes with the necessary corrections of the regular school committee meeting on August 10th, 2020.
Second.
Second. Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any further comments, questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 5-0. Okay, and now we'll do the meeting minutes from our meeting on August 18th.
I recommend that the school committee approve the minutes of the regular school committee meeting on August 18th, 2020.
Second.
Second. Okay, any comments or corrections on that one? Everybody's good? Okay. All right, all in favor of approval of the meeting minutes? Aye. 5-0. Okay, next on the agenda is good news. Anybody have any good news they want to share at this point?
I mean, the teachers are back. That's excellent news.
Okay, great.
So we're excited to see everybody. It was good to get around to some of the buildings and see people out and about talking to each other and prepping their classes, so that was exciting.
Are they starting their professional development and all that?
Yes, they are, and we have a whole section on that, so it's going to be unbelievable when I get to that point.
Okay, great. All right, any other good news?
Well, I'm going to bring it up. I think it's good. Boston Magazine did its high school listing, and we're number 30 on the top 50. I think that is some good news here. These lists are these lists, but it shows some good things are happening, and I think they'll continue to happen. I think the other good piece of news is I live with 2 students who are very excited about returning to school and looking forward to it. And I hope that all of us who are working in this together realize that they're the end goal, and that any decisions we make and things that we do going forward really do impact each one of them. And they're very, very excited about this whole year. And how it's going to be different. They're scared too. But at the same time, the excitement is there.
All right, anybody else with good news? Okay, we are now to our first public input part of our meeting. As mentioned, if anybody wanted to speak to the committee via the GoToMeeting, they would have contacted the superintendent, and I guess there's no...
We didn't have anyone, no, so we have no formal people joining us tonight for public participation.
Okay, great. But as I mentioned earlier, if anybody does have any comments to make at the end of the meeting, just email us and we'll read those into the record at the end of the meeting in our second public input. All right, so that brings us to new business. So
Great. Yeah, we're going to actually, just as we go through new business tonight, we've got some updates for you on the reopening of schools. We are not going to take action on number 1. That is still in the works, so we're still in process of negotiating that with the teachers union. So we will skip from number 1 right down to number 2. So just a very brief little slide presentation for you tonight. About 2 weeks ago, maybe 2.5 weeks ago or so, we'd put out a survey to families to ask them to help identify which learning model they would like to begin the school year under. So we had the hybrid learning model, which is going to be attending in person 2 days and then being remote 3 days, the 2 cohort model. Or individuals also have the ability to just select going fully remote to school. So we did put that survey out to families, and it was in line generally with the data that we had received on the non-binding survey earlier in August. And we have, almost a 70-30 split as far as students who are interested in the hybrid model compared to the fully remote model. And we're in the process now of going through all that data by school. It varied a little bit level to level. So the percentage of students who were opting for the hybrid was slightly higher at the high school level. About 75% of students wanted some in-person instruction, while about 25% of students were looking to be fully remote. When we went to the middle school level, again, it was 65-35 at Parker as far as hybrid and remote. And McCarthy, closer again to that 70-30. It was 69-31% in favor of hybrid and remote. I will get this presentation, it's only a couple of slides, but I'll get this up on the website as soon as the meeting is over. At the elementary level, again, this was a little bit more in line with the overall numbers, so about 65-35 at Byam. Again, same at Center Elementary School. Harrington, 63-73, and South Row, 67-33. So again, kind of, big takeaway was just that the about 70-30, if you want to look at it that way, students district-wide selecting some type of in-person as opposed to the remote. So the stage that we're at this point is actually, there are still, I want to say, a little over 100 students that we're still tracking down that haven't identified yet which model that they were going to be selecting. So our staff are back in the buildings, our secretary staff, our clerks, our counselors are back, and we're reaching out to those families to help them make a selection, because we're going to be now locking into schedules and assigning cohorts. So if we do not hear back from people by the end of this week, we will be sending them a letter indicating that they likely will be assigned the fully remote option to start the school year. We have to pick one to assign them to, and I don't want to assign someone to the partial in-person model unless they absolutely wanted that. So I think the default is going to be, we're going to be down to very few families, but that they will be assigned to start fully remote at the beginning of the school year. And then if they want to change, like everyone else, we talked about the commitment being the first quarter of the first term. So sometime early to mid-November, we'll take a look and see if we can, if you started out fully remote, but now it's going well and you wanted to try the hybrid, we're going to try to get you a spot as long as we have space within the rooms to do that, and vice versa. If you tried the hybrid and it wasn't working for you and you want to go fully remote, we'll be able to try to make those accommodations. But we were actually, like I said, actually pleased overall with the response rate we had. For about 5,000 students in the district, to only be tracking down, a little over 100, really is not that bad. So we'll be working on that, or already are.
You had a question on there about whether we opted to leave the system.
Yes.
Do we know how many people have opted to do that?
We had 55 students as of today that indicated they were going to opt out. So it's a combination of students who are enrolling in private or parochial schools for the fall, because a lot of the private and parochial schools are doing full day in person, and that was attractive to a lot of our families. They really wanted that. So we do have a number of students that are doing that. We did have a number of, say, high school students opting to go to private high schools. So we have had a bunch of high school withdrawals on that line. Significant number of the 55, I want to say in the 20, 22-ish range, are kindergarten students. So they hadn't come to us yet. So they've decided that maybe they'd like to do a private kindergarten program that might have some more full 5-day-a-week in person. But the total number is 55 as of right now.
Okay, thank you.
So that's something that we're obviously tracking. We also, in that 55, is a number of families who've decided to homeschool. So you didn't necessarily have to enroll in a private school. You do have the option of homeschooling. So that's a process that goes through Dr. Hirsch's office. We have seen an uptick in homeschool applications, which we typically don't receive every year. So that was the kind of the third grouping of students that we've seen. But the total is 55.
Thank you.
We go down the numbers?
Yes, I just have questions about the hybrid program.
You have what?
The questions on the hybrid program.
Okay.
Um,
Did you want to ask them now, or do you think they were going to be answered?
Yeah, I can ask them now. So I just had a question, I've had some questions, from parents and community members on the specialists.
Yeah.
They'll be happening when the kids, leave school and then go home.
Yep.
What will the specialists be doing in the first part of the day?
So the thought process behind, kind of stacking the schedule in the early part of the day with around the kind of the academic core, and then having the specials be in the afternoon was really around trying to keep our populations as separate as we can, and really kind of keeping kids within a cohort. So if you think about, I'm going to just use elementary, it really doesn't matter which grade level. Your 8 to 10 kids that are in cohort A that are going to be physically in class, they're going to basically stay in the same room, primarily with that same classroom teacher. Special ed support staff, someone like that might come in and work with students in that class, but they're really kind of self-contained. What we wanted to do was, after the kids go home for the afternoon, we didn't want them integrating, say, with other classes. If you had kids, leaving the room to go to art or music or gym, we were really trying to keep them contained. But we also know that we don't want to introduce a lot of extra adults to the building setting, and we really want to kind of keep a cohort of adults also in the building. So the thought process is to really utilize those specialists who will be teaching in the afternoon, but almost kind of pair them up as a second adult and have them co-teach wherever they can in the, say, the elementary program in the school. In the event a teacher were ever to get sick or not be available, that would already be a body that would be identified in the school. The students would know them. We wouldn't be introducing, say, someone else for a particular day to come in and help out. So that was really the thought process. The other is we do have a great opportunity where we're going to have such a limited number of students actually in person in the classroom that we might be able to do some breakouts and actually do some real good instruction just because of the numbers. But that we also are going to have, again, for the first time, some students who are going to be in the classroom learning. At the same time, you're going to have some students at home learning. So an extra adult in the room could help, keep the students who are online following along, assisting, things along those lines. They're absolutely valuable. They're just going to be in a little bit of a different role as we get into the school year. I think what I've heard from some staff, really not only just the core academic staff, but also, like, say, the special staff, is they'd really like an opportunity eventually to expand the day, because we really were just trying to start slow, start with the 4-hour block, and then if we can get to a point where it's really going well and we have everything worked out, I'd like nothing more to be able to extend it back to a regular day. If that happened, we could really entertain a slightly different schedule during the day to incorporate maybe some specials at that point. But the way we looked at it was really to try to get the 4-hour, kind of academic core done within the building and have those specialists supporting that core. I don't know if that helps, but that was the rationale.
So I understand the rationale, and I don't disagree with the rationale. I think my concern is, one, is that I want to make sure that the specialists understand that they're a valued part of the staff and not just, we're kicking them to the end of the day because, we need something to fill in. Because, we have phenomenal support staff. We have phenomenal support staff. We have phenomenal specialists. And
Right.
we have, award-winning programs in the schools that, we don't want to see dismantled or become neglected because,
Right.
of this particular model. So I think as long as we're outlining this as our initial objective with the goal to move toward something where the specialists are more integrated throughout the days, I think that's I think it's an important message to get across. The other thing I think I worry about for some of these kids, their specialists are really the thing that anchor them to the school. Whether it be band or chorus or, their arts program or physical education, whatever it might be. And my concern is that, we're having kids coming back, we want to focus on social emotional learning, and we may be taking away one of the things that's so important to them, as part of their school experience,
Right.
and putting it to the end of the day, when if we had it during the school day, it might help them to feel a little bit better about being in school, release some anxiety, and improve some of the social emotional learning that is part of our goal as we start the school year.
Right. I hear you, and I think it's a challenge because, again, now we move to the middle school. To be able to do that, and you have, say, 8 classrooms, let's say even just 2 of them ended up being fully remote, but you still have 6 classrooms of kids who would be during the school day. they're not all gonna go to orchestra or band one classroom at a time, because you get the whole grade level together and they do orchestra together. It would really defeat the purpose, and even like spatially, this point, just given what the different guidelines are and the recommendations are, I don't necessarily think it would be wise to move all fifth grade kids together when we're trying to keep them separate in their cohorts during the academic piece, to come into, say, do the band or the orchestra. And I've gotten a couple emails from parents also just wondering, like, are we, is it a budget reduction, or, are we cutting the arts and things like that? That's the farthest thing from the truth. We have not even entertained that or discussed that. It's really just for all practical purposes, trying to get the school year launched, maintaining, again, those distancing guidelines, trying to be super careful that we're keeping cohorts of kids together, and not, doing all this work to then get them all together, and, make our program potentially less effective if we were able to run into issues by kind of commingling the different cohorts. It would just fly counter.
No, and
But-
I understand what you're saying. I just think it's important that we make sure that that message is communicated to the specialists and to the parents and the kids, who really, this is a very, very important part of their lives.
Right.
And that, hopefully, just a temporary,
Right.
measure until we can, get back into some more type of normal schedule.
It is just gonna be different, the delivery, the venue this year for everything that we're doing. I mean, even, different academic pieces, it's just gonna look a little bit different. But that doesn't mean that anything is less valuable than it was last year when we were fully operating, and people shouldn't read into that, and if we need to reinforce that message, we certainly can. That we're certainly not looking to marginalize and minimize any group that we have.
Is there anything that we can do to support the specialists and maybe maintaining the relationships that they've developed with these kids up until, this point? I mean, I know that we're gonna have them helping out in classrooms, but is there anything above and beyond that we could ask them to do in terms of the social emotional learning that might help them feel connected to their groups that they've worked with, so hard for over the years?
You mean the new groups that they're gonna be
No,
associated with, or the
the
larger
old
groups?
groups, yeah.
I think, again, we talked today a little bit about, like, say, scheduling at the middle school level, and how it is gonna look a little different, and it's gonna be very difficult to get grade levels together for, say, band. So, yeah, again, we need to start under the schedule that we've kind of put out there, but as we're able to get into this a little bit, if staff are willing and flexible, we might be able to actually shift some hours around, so that maybe we can actually create almost like an extra block at the end of the day. It would be remote, kids would be home, but, for multidisciplinary, grade levels to get together and to have time to practice or, compete, things like that. So that's possible. We just need to work with individual staff. If we wanted to add that extra hour on at the end of the day, so that even like both middle schools could get their kids together for, say, some type of music program. If we can work with the staff and they're flexible, because again, they're gonna be really like co-teaching and supporting during the day. If they can start an hour later, but then stay an hour later, at the end of the day where it's remote, we might be able to accomplish that. And a lot of them might be interested in doing that, because they're gonna really be working with their kids that they normally would see in person. Again, it's just gonna be a little bit of a different venue. But I do think as we get this rolled out, and every couple of weeks, we see how things are going, we're gonna make adjustments. This isn't gonna be perfect. I mean, this is gonna be a moving target all fall as we try to get this going. We're gonna have to make little tweaks to schedules and times and the way we deliver instruction, and, do we add a class here, do we subtract something here? So it is gonna be a work in progress.
I agree.
Jenna, to continue on your line of questioning, can you address a little bit about that at the high school level? I think that was a lot about specialists at elementary and middle school.
Right.
What do you envision in terms of activities, in addition to also having that special type of class where it's music, art, orchestra, whatever it is?
The high
What's-
school's a little bit of a different animal, because the high school is gonna maintain, just because we couldn't do the cohort model at the high school because of the number of courses and the leveled courses that the kids take, it just wasn't feasible. So the high school's still gonna maintain their kind of rotating schedule. So students will, at the high school level, be going into, say, if band happened to be second period, it's a second period day, they will be going to band. Band is gonna look different, right? Even though the kids are there, they're there in person, distancing is gonna be happening. I honestly can't even explain every little component of how it's gonna look different, but it's gonna look different. but within their schedule, they're gonna have, say, band and art and things like
Okay.
that. You know, one of the things that we're working on now is even, again, today's only the second day the teachers have been back, and we really do want them to focus on, you know, the first day of school and getting ready for the regular instruction piece. But when it comes to, say, like extracurriculars and things like that, we will be able to now start talking, because we have staff back, you know, what can be done remotely. There's not gonna be a lot that can be done in person right out of the gates, because again, just, you've gotta be concerned about your numbers. But are there limited things that we can start doing, even remotely? You know, it's on a little bit later, but we can talk about it now. You know, sports, and what is sports gonna look like this fall? We still don't have like definitive guidance for you. The MIAA and a bunch of different groups put out, a lot of acronyms, put out their plans for basically like 4 seasons, 4 bridge seasons. Taking a look at certain sports within a season that may not be appropriate to operate right now. Like football was one where, you know, they're indicating you might be able to do some practicing, but they really didn't want to have multiple schools getting together and competing. So that sport is likely being pushed to the bridge season, you know, a little bit later on this winter before spring sports. But then even within the different sports that were recommended that could play, there were all different modifications to play that had to be considered. So I know all the coaches got together, the ADs got together to talk about what this would look like. Individual communities may have to make the decision about some sports that are, you know, kind of questionable, about whether they should play, say, this season, or they should move to that bridge season, which is the end of, I think it's like the end of February through
February,
early April or so. Because, you know, when you look right now at, say, the fall, for instance, I think they still had, the only like indoor sport that they were contemplating allowing was like girls volleyball. And, you know, I don't know, some communities may not be comfortable having indoor sports in the fall, and you're gonna have the option of moving that sport to February. Now, I don't have an opinion on this yet, because I haven't even been able to get through all the guidance, and we're really waiting on the the MVC, athletic directors and principals, to put a proposal together, because as a league, we wanna make sure we're all offering the same sports and the same seasons and whatnot. Those meetings are happening this week, so I think the next time we get together, I'll have more information on that for you.
Okay.
But there's a lot in the works even around sports and what's gonna be safe. You know, there's a couple of winter sports that I don't know now, you know, how potentially they could happen. And I don't know.
I know one.
hate to say it to you, Dennis, but, you know, like, say, wrestling is gonna be a tough one.
Yeah.
You know, we don't know
Well,
what they're
that
gonna
is
do
gonna
with
be
it.
tough, yeah.
But then again, you have the whole indoor issue with the, you know, your basketballs and all of that. We all wanna play sports, you know, we all wanna be able to start the athletics, we wanna be able to do, the extracurricular activities and clubs and whatnot. I do think, again, it's just gonna look a little bit different. People are gonna have to be, patient as we roll out the start of the school year and we get all those different clubs meeting to figure out what's viable and what's not. A lot, even say at the high school and a little bit at the middle school level, is staff dependent. So we're still working through staffing issues for the start of the school year. And, you know, we have some staff that are gonna be, on site. We also have some staff that are likely gonna be remote. And I don't know if that might look different if you've had a particular person be the coach or the club advisor and they're not in the school. I don't know, again, if it's gonna work, if it's not gonna work. So that all has to be just worked through. But I do think between now and the opening of school, at least everyone is back and they are talking about this. So there will be more information coming, but no one has forgotten about it. And I would just tell people that, you know, if things aren't starting right when they would want or they have questions, none of this has anything to do with budget. You know, we are fully budgeted for all of our sports and for all of our clubs and extracurriculars. Money is not the issue. It's more the time and just figuring out how we can properly and safely get as many of these activities, extracurricular activities, going up again.
Okay.
Hang on, just going back to the numbers, the 6832, and I know we're still working with our various staffing groups. Overall, though, in terms of the remote learners, does it look like we'll have the staff that we need to teach that remote section of students?
Yes, I mean, I'll tell you this, I don't think we're gonna have too many staffing issues. I think we actually, when all is said and done, I think we're gonna be able to accommodate, really the vast majority of teaching staff that have expressed an issue with some type of a remote assignment. When it comes to the students who have requested the remote, I think we are gonna be able to obviously satisfy that. we may, at certain grade levels of the district, actually not have enough people or staff who have requested a remote assignment, and we need to offer that remote program, so we may actually have to identify a staff member who will still be physically in the classroom, but they actually might not have kids in front of them. They might be assigned to be a remote teacher. So they might have their classroom of kids remote the whole time, as opposed to having someone in front of them. So I don't think we're gonna have too many issues, I really don't. We will know much more, I would say, within a week's time, as we're doing all of these different pairings. At least the core teachers. And then we do have to figure out, some of the specialists when it comes to like special education providers, OT, PT, speech, things along those lines, because they really line up more with the individual student as opposed to just a general support for a classroom. So there's gonna be a lot of scheduling that has to go into play on that front, because we are gonna try to minimize the number of staff who are assigned to work with students within individual classrooms, to just keep the numbers of adults really as minimal as we can. We can't eliminate it, but have, the least number of adults working with the cohorts.
Any other questions?
It actually was a special ed question.
Yeah.
Whether or not, so we know we have our high needs kids, but for students who are not high needs students but receive special education services, will we be able to deliver those in person, or will those be remote, if the student is a hybrid student? So, so if they're in their core classes, for example, in the morning,
Yeah.
but they have a pullout for, learning center or speech or something, will they be able to receive that in the morning, person to person, or will it get bumped to the afternoon and done remotely?
I'll have to, we'll have to confer, because a lot of this is on a case-by-case basis.
Okay,
I do know that they're trying not to pull out as much as they can, but the sped teachers are trying to really push into the classrooms
okay,
and pull even like small groups if they had a pull-out instruction, and do it in the classroom with the kids, so that you're not pulling 2 kids from this class and 2 kids from another class. Again, you've got that commingling.
right.
So if the special ed teacher can go in and support the kids in the classroom, that's gonna be ideal. If there are remote special ed services that need to be provided, we're gonna try to provide those on the days that the student's already remote, so that we're not taking away FaceTime when the students are actually in the classroom. So, again, it is a scheduling issue, and it really depends on the service grid and what type of services they're receiving, as you know. But for the most part, when the students are actually present in the buildings, we really want them to be working with teachers. My first inclination wouldn't be to try to pull them for some kind of a remote service while they're there, if we can avoid that, and really take advantage of that FaceTime that they're gonna have with the staff.
No, I agree. I didn't know if they would, say that, let's say they had speech therapy, and they were in the building, hybrid program. Would they be able to meet with their speech therapist face-to-face? Or would that service get bumped to the afternoon when the student was at home during the specialist time, for example? I know that sometimes in middle school, kids get
Right.
pulled out during the specialist for their special education services.
Right.
So is that when they would receive it?
It really is a scheduling issue.
Yeah,
Okay.
if
But,
once they
by
get to the
student.
schedule, they'll stop plugging in who's gonna be seeing who
Okay.
and what's gonna be the best methodology to be able to deliver the service.
Okay.
Yeah, there has been a lot of talk about, when we can, and particularly like, say, speech services, as much as can be delivered virtually or remotely, that is the direction that really the advice is coming from and the guidance is coming from. But there are circumstances also in situations where students need the face-to-face services. So people are gonna have to be flexible on that front,
Okay.
both
Thank
staff
you.
and
Yeah.
students.
I mean, speech in particular, you need to see the person's
Right.
face
Right.
in order to do the articulation protocols around that.
Any other questions on the models, or the numbers for the models, or?
We don't have a particular item on technology here, at least, am I missing it on the agenda? So if we're not, can you just address, I know that there's been, we've received, notifications from technology saying, computers are gonna be made available and giving us schedules and so on. If you can just update on what's going on with that, and, whether, people have enough information on this, or have you had anybody that's concerned about not getting a computer, so on? If you can just give a little update.
Yeah, I haven't personally heard anyone concerned about not getting a computer. I do know that we have a limited number of people in our technology department, and that they've been deploying devices in waves. So I haven't been following all the emails, but I know about 2 weeks ago, They invited all of the incoming 5th and 9th grade students to come at both Parker, McCarthy, and the high school, excuse me, and receive their device. So that waiver was done. Then I do know communications went out to the high school level, I believe a separate communication from middle and even elementary, to set up times where if people need a technology device to start the school year, that they can pick up a device. We, again, in talking to Bill, we're in pretty good shape as far as our devices go for people who need them to get the year started. And he has communicated, and even when I've talked to individuals, that, we have a larger order in. We're just waiting for it to be fulfilled. We're back ordered like a lot of other districts. That if someone doesn't absolutely need a device to start off the school year, and particularly if you're going to be a hybrid student, a fully remote student, and you're already at home and you already have a device, and you're not like bringing it back and forth, if you don't need one from day one from us, it would be helpful if you didn't request one. And then as soon as we get the shipment in, if you'd like a district-issued device at that point, we'd have no problem giving you one. And he'll be communicating that as well. I think in his messaging, it was that, certainly if you need a device, come get a device. But if you, if you don't, then, please hold off until the bigger shipment came in.
Okay, can you clarify for hybrid students, if they choose to remain with their own device at home, not get another one from the school system, are they allowed to bring their device to school?
Yeah, so if you're a hybrid student and you have your own device at home and you want to bring that into school with you, yes, you could always do that.
Okay.
So you can join the network, you'd be credentialed to come on as a guest. You can absolutely do that.
Okay,
What we have heard some parents ask is, well, if I'm not comfortable sending my student to school with the home device, can they just use one, the school one, like a loaner when they're there? Unfortunately, right now, no, because we don't have the backup devices for them to use. We basically have had to take all of the devices we have for students at the schools, all the different carts we have, break those down to give them to students to use at home. So we don't have a backup device for them right now at the school for them to leave their personal computer at home and use the school computer. So if people are uncomfortable about a student traveling back and forth, again, we're not looking to have the days that they're in person really be tech heavy at the school. But if they're not comfortable bringing that device back and forth, they can ask for a district device if they're more comfortable having that travel back and forth. But again, I think the group that we're trying to target is particularly, you've got the 1,000 students plus that want full remote. And if they don't need a device right off the bat, if they just helped us and didn't necessarily take one, that would be helpful.
thank you.
Okay, anything else in the models?
Just, Jake, can we put together a technology FAQ? Just to answer people's questions. Do we have one already?
The teachers all received one too about IT and everything that's supposed to happen. So the teachers.
I meant for
received-
parents.
Oh, for parents.
Yeah, there were tech questions that came up in the
The other
general
one.
FAQ.
Yep. But just, if something
I can check
breaks,
for you.
whatever, just,
Yeah, I can see what's already on the website and speak with Bill about that.
Just one question. Can I talk about not technology for a second?
Yeah.
Just a quick one. So I think as everybody understood it from the other meetings, right? Teachers would be teaching part of the class in the classroom and then, part of their class remote. And people probably made decisions on that. Well, actually, I know they did. So, some people might have picked remote because they don't like the model. I don't know. So what if we change that and say, okay, we're going to have remote specific teachers and the hybrid teachers are just going to focus on face-to-face learning? Could a parent at this point change their decision?
We're not going to have that, though. I don't want there to be confusion. So,
Okay.
let's say tomorrow, if we haven't made the
Yep.
assignments yet and someone wanted to change, like I've gotten a couple dribs and drabs each day, and before we lock in, yes, we've been trying to be helpful to people to do that. But the hybrid teachers right now in the school, say at the elementary level, are going to have some students in front of them and some students remoting into the class. If you just picked pure remote, there is likely going to be a class at each grade level that's just dedicated to pure remote. So it's a teacher, but the teacher's in the classroom.
Yep.
It's just her, say 20 students, or his 20 students are just virtual the whole time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I had another question. In this remote and hybrid model, learning model, it appears that the first day is Wednesday, which means that
We haven't gotten
everybody
there
is,
We haven't got there yet.
Oh, sorry. No, that's,
That was
I
a
didn't,
great
I didn't,
review.
no, but this is,
You're right ahead.
it's another item here?
Yeah,
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 the-
it
the
comes
new
up
calendar.
next, yeah, after this.
Okay, I can ask in that then.
All right, anything else about the models or the numbers in the models, or? Okay, so we'll go on to the next.
When they finalize, when we actually have them posted and scheduled and whatnot, we can do a report for you just to show you like what the different class sizes look like under the different models, just so you can get a sense like district-wide what's happening. Okay? Just wanted to touch briefly, so before I get into this next item, under this item number 2, number G, was just kind of a review of our health and safety protocols and procedures. We've been talking about that at a couple meetings. I did invite Peggy Gump, who is our coordinator for school nursing services, and Sue Rosa, who's the Board of Health nurse, to come and kind of review a little presentation with us on that. And I asked them to join us around 7 o'clock. So even though we're going to be going through this, if we don't quite get to everything here, if we could stop and let them come on at 7 to do their piece, and then we'll come back and finish. But I just wanted to flag that for you, to even remind me as we get closer to 7 o'clock.
Can I just let you know, there is a complete FAQ and parent user piece up on the website for them to access if they would like to find out stuff about technology,
But check.
for parents.
Related to this?
parents,
Okay.
yes.
Oh, to parents, okay.
So just briefly, just want to touch on, I mentioned earlier, before the selection deadline, we did try to have a couple of parent focus groups to be able to invite parents to ask some questions if they still had questions. We had set up a go-to-meeting site. There was an evening session and a morning session that, we obviously had technical issues with. So the particular platform that we typically use has a capacity up to about 250 people. At the point in time where we were hosting the sessions, I think we already had more than 4,000 people already select their choices. So I didn't anticipate people who had already made the choice to come back on and re-listen. And so the software just could not support the number of users. What we ended up doing on the Friday, so we learned this on the Thursday night, which was just a tough because we were working at the same time. We learned it wasn't going to happen. Telemedia did say that they would broadcast the session on Friday morning so that people, even if they couldn't connect to the link, could still listen and have hear what the different questions were and what the responses were. So again, going forward in the future, obviously, if we're going to have a bigger town-wide event, I'll pick a different software protocol or procedure to use for that. But we were able to record each of the sessions, and we posted them up on the website, and we got the email out to parents so that they could link to them, and they were actually very well subscribed. Even though some parents didn't get to ask their questions live, we got a lot of feedback from parents that were able to go back after, and they were only about an hour long. They were pretty informative. So parents were able to get some questions answered and get just a general overview of the different programs. And I do think that helped some make their final decision, because even over that weekend, we picked up the vast majority of the people that hadn't finally responded. But again, I thought going forward, obviously, if we do that again, we'll pick a different software to use. But the feedback we did receive from people who were able to go back afterward and view the tapes was positive.
What's the plan for communication, ongoing communications from here on in? Like, we're just going with the s'mores, or what's
Yeah, so, I mean, as far as like the written communication,
any kind of
this,
communication?
yeah, but the written one, like the s'more newsletter, we found people appreciate and like. We obviously, I've been holding off a little bit on communications because I want to have more to tell people. Tonight, we are going to be able to approve hopefully the revised school calendar, so we'll at least be able to set the start date. I'll get a communication note tomorrow on that. We are going to get into like a weekly format, and at least at the district level, give generic information about what's happening. The schools use this more as well. They do a weekly newsletter for them, so that'll be happening. I'm open if you have advice, or if you're hearing that people would want more formats. At some point, we're going to get to the point where it's school specific and it's individual, like class and grade specific. So I do know that like our principals, particularly again at the elementary level, have done a great job. They've hosted like Q&A sessions for parents, staff. They've had different sessions as well. So they really are making themselves available to talk through as much of the planning that we know about. It's really now getting into the implementation stage. And we've just got to get, kids into the buildings and assign it to teachers and be able to kind of communicate out what this is all going to look like. But that will be ongoing.
Any other questions on communications?
I just think we need to up our communication. I think what happened with the parent forum was unfortunate and also unacceptable. I mean, I think we had a lot of very nervous, anxious, concerned parents, and I don't think we did anything, at least in the first night, to alleviate their concerns. I think there are many unanswered questions, and I know this, certainly as a teacher, and just kind of watching things as they unfold across the state and the country, that there's many, many things that we just have not been able to address yet. But I think that even if it's just to say, we're working on it, we haven't been able to address this yet, or some of this isn't going to be solved until we actually get into the buildings with the kids, and, it's going to be an evolutionary process, basically going forward. I think if we do that, then, it might help to alleviate some of the concerns that people have. But I think we just have to do a better job. That's all I can say, is I think we just have to do a better job.
I think one format I've seen used quite a bit has been video, and streaming right from your website. And thinking where we are now with this, where we are in the process, if there can be something that kind of brings it all together for the different schools, just brings the whole district together on what we're doing in these models and how they're rolling out and so on, and what we know and what we don't know. If you can put out some communication like that, it might be extremely helpful. It was really, really difficult that first night where, people couldn't access. And the frustration for them, I thought, was, this is very important to me. It's a very important decision, and my question is important, and I need it addressed in order to make a decision. So, and I know you realize that. And I know that, you're going to look for something else that continues, but maybe even having some regular sessions and making sure that consistently regular at each school, if you're going to do it at a school level, from the principal or from yourself generally, and in a method, maybe not just as a newsletter, but in that kind of Q&A format, Zoom meetings, whatever it is that the format's going to be, but something beyond what we're doing now that allows people to just ask the general types of questions. I think after the first month or so, it's not going to be general questions. It's going to be much more specific, and that type of communication may not be as important anymore. But right now, the general type of communication is important, and people need to hear it because they don't visualize it. I know personally sitting back sometimes and thinking, okay, what's my student's day going to look like when we start? I can't even imagine how the schedules are being created at the high school. I think it's an incredible task. And so just even talking about that with parents and how it's going and how you're creating them and so on, just generally helps people to transition back in and feel comfortable that, different things have been thought about. So I think Donna's correct. The communication has to keep on going. And if we can do something, even if you're not specific on, because we don't know it, and we just say that, I think it's very important.
Okay, anything else on the communication piece? Okay, moving on to the schedule.
Thanks.
Calendar, sorry.
Yep, the school calendar. So one of the things that we do have for you this evening that we would like you to vote to amend is the official start to the school year. Again, we are still in negotiations with the union around the reopening plan, and that work is ongoing. But we do want to have some definitivity for our parents and even staff as far as like when they know that actual instruction with students will begin. So the DESE, obviously, had allowed up to 10 days of professional development and training and preparedness for the start of the school year. So we, again, because we haven't come to a particular agreement on the start date, we knew it was going to be no earlier than the 14th, no later than the 16th. are just recommending this evening that we adopt a calendar that has the first school day for students be Wednesday, the 16th. So you have a new calendar in front of you that does have that. Obviously, the other thing we did is there were a couple of times when the PD half-days fell off Wednesdays. So we know that's going to be a full remote day anyway. Instead of having a half day, we moved those couple of days to Wednesdays. But nothing else on the calendar changed as far as holidays and things like that are concerned. They're already on there. But we're just recommending that we adopt the calendar before you that basically locks in Wednesday the 16th. Now, under either scenario, whether you're hybrid or whether you're fully remote, Wednesdays is a remote day. So Wednesday the 16th would be a full remote day for all of our students. And obviously more information will be forthcoming about that as we get closer to the start of the school year. So I'd recommend you approve this revised calendar, and then we'll get that out to
Can I
parents.
just ask a related but maybe off-topic question? Now that we have, and we are going remote, what happened with snow days? Does snow days become remote days? I mean, I'm looking at the calendar and they're adding in the 5 days at the end and.
Well, that's going to have to be a work in progress. So by your policy, you actually add the extra days just as potential snow days, and I think we should maintain that just to have that on there. Obviously, if we're in a remote environment, and all of us are going to be remote at some point, you could potentially look at moving to a remote day if it was, say, a snow day. The only issue that we're going to have, and we're just going to have to take a look at this, is more than half of the time that I have to cancel school, it's because of down power. So, we lose power in Chelmsford all the time. So you can't really have a remote day if you can't access the internet. I don't know how that's going to play out. If it was more of like a snowstorm, then, we certainly could entertain something like that. I just don't know how we would guarantee the power piece. But we'll take a peek at that.
You can already tell Linda's like crawling out of her skin over there.
No, I just think that we also have to get some guidance from the Department of Ed, because they had made their change for anybody that did, there was the last year of, if you had a program that allowed for that extended learning time, that you could do that, and now we weren't part of that process, so we would have to get that released too from the Department of Ed to make sure that they would be okay with it being considered a snow day. But just to Dr. Lang's point, we typically are canceling because all the power's out for days on end in this town. Hopefully,
So-
most of the trees have come down.
For the 16th, on that first day, what do you envision that first day being remotely with the students?
I mean, I would think there'd be a lot of welcomes and
Yeah, I mean, what will it be?
expectations.
I mean, obviously, over the next 2 weeks, the school, once everything's finalized, the schools will be reaching out to families to let them know their cohorts and their teachers and whatnot. That'll probably, I mean, students will be provided the link to the class meet and whatnot. Teachers will put together, I assume, like a little orientation day for number one, meet and greet, things along those lines. The schedule obviously isn't going to go heavy academics on day one. I think it's going to be a lot of the SEL work, the kind of talking about, meeting your classmates. But that would be the first day.
I can just see the possibility that technologically and so on, it being the first day and things just, really think about whether you want your first day to be a completely remote day. But, you want it to start out right. You want the school year to go very well.
Right.
Already, we're waiting a very long time from what happened last year to have that first day. And it's going to be, quite different to do it remotely than it is to have, actually meet your teacher and meet people on that first day.
But even if you met on Tuesday, half your kids would still be remote.
That's
and then it'd be a
correct.
remote. So
So herein comes
so
my
now everybody's in
question.
the same boat though. The first day,
Right,
no matter what you picked, you're all gonna be getting the same message and
right.
meeting your teachers the same way. So
Right.
that's the other half.
So some people have actually sent comments requesting that you actually don't have synchronous teaching until in the elementary level at a minimum, and in the middle school as well. The teachers have had an opportunity to physically meet the cohorts. Because you're going to meet one cohort 2 days, and then the next one is going to be there's a weekend and then you meet the next one. So in other words, you never, it's gonna take quite a few days before you actually meet people physically and in person.
You wouldn't
Yeah,
need
it's
time
not-
on learning. You can't, you said you wouldn't be able to meet time
It's,
on learning.
this is not a perfect world, this is not a
Right.
perfect situation. We're not gonna be able to start, everyone in person, or, this is what it is. So Wednesday, the 16th is the recommendation for the first day. It's obviously gonna look a little different than other first days, but we can't have, some students start one day, some start another. This isn't a perfect world. Even though those Thursday, Friday, students are gonna get, 2 days of in-person, the ABs are gonna catch up on that at Thanksgiving. Because, the B group isn't gonna go Thursday and Friday for Thanksgiving, but the A group's gonna go that week. There's really no perfect way of starting it, and we need that extra day to, basically backs us up to the 16th. But a significant number of students are starting remotely anyway, under any scenario, like Dennis said, even if it was the Tuesday, you still have all the remote students and half of the in-person students. There's just no perfect way to have everyone, meet on that same day.
Other questions on the calendar? Okay, we'll take a motion.
I recommend that the school committee adopt the amended 2020-2021 school calendar.
Second.
Any further comments or questions on the calendar? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? 5-0. Okay,
I
want to
think
switch
if
to,
we could, yep, I
Yeah.
see them on, so as I mentioned at a previous meeting, I had invited Peggy Gump, who is our coordinator for school nursing services, and then Sue Rosa, who is the Board of Health representative for the town. And I see Peggy is joining us. Give me 1 second, Peggy. And then I saw Sue up there, so maybe she stepped out and she'll come back in a second. All right, Peggy, if you can hear me, I'm making you a presenter so that you can share your presentation. And there were a lot of questions that had come up at previous school committee meetings around like health and safety and what the district's response protocols would be, things along those lines. So we thought it would be best just to have Peggy and Sue, if they were available. I thank both of them for coming, and just be able to review some of those protocols and procedures so that you had a comfort level with regard to what we're doing here as we get ready for the opening of school. So Peggy, can you hear me?
He was having some technical difficulties.
That would be the first day of school. Yeah.
Okay, Peg?
I have to mute you.
Okay, great. Was
Oh, gosh.
difficulties, so,
Jay, you gotta mute yourself.
so, yeah, so thank you for inviting me. I appreciate the opportunity to review the reentry plan with you, to, ensure the health and the safety of our school community. So I will just dive right into the presentation. So we have ordered and received the appropriate amounts of PPE based on the DESI guidelines on the required safety for the reopening of schools. So we have on hand mask, adult and child, gloves, face shields, gowns, eye goggles, and for the nurses, we also have the N95 and the KN95 masks. We have stored the PPE in a secure location in each building, and we will track the usage rate, so we'll be able to order when we're getting a little bit low. And we have provided the administration and the staff with training on the CPS protocol that I'm reviewing with you this evening. And the training included, how the virus is transmitted, how to use the PPE, screening for signs and symptoms of COVID-19, the protocols that we have in place for students and staff if they were to become ill at school, as well as best practices for health and hygiene. And we had a comprehensive training titled COVID-19, a training for keeping staff and students safe and healthy. And that was presented to staff yesterday on August 31st. And our facilities director, Brian Curley, has purchased the appropriate signage for the district, and that signage has been delivered and is posted in each building. So in terms of attesting to wellness, everyone must do their part to protect others and not come to school if they're either exhibiting any symptoms of COVID-19 or if they're just not feeling well. So we're asking staff to monitor themselves for the COVID symptoms daily prior to reporting to work, and the staff will also be asked to complete the COVID-19 daily certification sheet. Parents and caregivers will also be asked to, monitor their students at home, before they come to school, make sure they're feeling well enough to be here. And we will stress to the parents just the importance of keeping their children at home if they're not feeling well. And we will have a COVID-19 symptoms checklist that we're going to share with the families, and the staff will also have it. And if a student or staff member is not feeling well and has experienced any COVID-19 symptoms, they will be sent home from school. And we're also going to ask families to provide 4 emergency contact numbers, just in the event that they're not able to pick up their child, so that if their child weren't feeling well at school, they would be able to get dismissed. So just briefly, as we all know, the COVID-19, it's a respiratory virus. It's spread through the respiratory secretion droplets, from a cough or a sneeze of an infected person, which, would go directly to another person. And it's most often at distances for less than 6 feet. So, which is why, we really want to maintain that 6-foot distance in our schools. There is no definitive evidence for airborne transmission at distances greater than 6 feet. Indirect contact is fairly rare. It only accounts for about 6%, and indirect contact would be something on the surface or on a piece of paper or on a doorknob, things like that. Pre-symptomatic transmission, it's documented about 48 hours prior to the person having symptoms, and for asymptomatic transmission, they will count 48 hours back from the positive test result. So what can we do in the school community, as well as the community, to reduce the risk of transmission? We have a comprehensive protocol to reduce that transmission in the school community, and as the school community is aware, you have a mask policy, which you just wrote, which states that a face covering is required for all students in grades K through 12, and a written note would be required from the physician if a student needed to be exempt from that. We will be incorporating mask breaks into the classroom schedule as needed, and DESI recommends, minimum of 2 per day. But, the teachers will monitor that, see how the kids are doing, especially in the beginning of the year, because this will be a new transition to wearing a mask in school. We're also going to incorporate hygiene as one of our very critical measures to reduce the spread. Students and staff will perform hand hygiene upon arriving to school, and that's either hand washing or using the hand sanitizer. And we're going to ask that you perform hand hygiene before coming to school, before eating, before you put your mask on or take it off, after using the restroom, also before dismissal, and then as needed throughout the day. We will have the touchless hand sanitizer dispensers. We have installed them in the high traffic areas, such as the lobbies in the buildings. We will have tables at the entry and exit points of coming into school where the students and staff could use hand sanitizer at that table as they walk in. Our facilities director, Brian Curley, has also ordered the mobile hand washing stations. They should be shipped actually this Friday and hopefully installed next week. And the elementary schools will receive 1 for the modular classrooms in each of the elementary buildings, and the middle schools will receive 2 hand stations each, and they will be placed in strategic places where needed. In terms of education on best practices, we're hoping to provide a lot of signage in the buildings and just really going over good respiratory hygiene, as well as just education overall about, the health and the safety protocols. We're going to strictly enforce the physical distance of 6 feet, and that's the goal that we're going to strive for to reduce the spread of illness. And staff and students will be educated on following distances in the areas such as the hallways and the stairwells. We're going to organize the students into groups to mitigate the transmission of the virus. And there'll be assigned seating in the classroom that will hopefully aid in reducing the transmission rates. Attendance will be taken, and that will also help with the contact tracing. In terms of reporting absences, we will ask if the parents could please notify their school nurse directly if their child has any COVID-19 symptoms. And also in regard to the staff, we'll ask if they could just inform their supervisor and the HR director directly if they have any symptoms and they might need to be out. And in terms of cleaning and disinfecting, the facility director has a plan for the frequent cleaning and the disinfectant of the school environment, and that protocol has been communicated to the custodial staff as well as the staff that is here at night cleaning the buildings. COVID-19, the signs and symptoms, again, we're going to review them with the staff as well as the students. This protocol, the CPS COVID-19 Health and Safety Protocol, will be posted on the website, and we will have a checklist of symptoms for the staff and the families. And education is really an integral part of this reentry plan, so that the staff and the families feel safe and supported, not only as we enter the new school year, but this will be ongoing throughout the school year. And just to review the common symptoms, most common is a fever of 100 degrees or more, a dry cough, a new loss of sense of smell or taste. Sometimes you may have a headache, shortness of breath, muscle aches, a sore throat. Very rarely vomiting, diarrhea, runny nose, or sneezing. And in the U.S., children 0 to 17 account for just 7.3% of all the cases. Testing combined with contact tracing and isolation will help the control of the spread of this COVID-19. All test results, negative or positive, are reported to DPH, which is the Department of Public Health, and when the individual tests positive, those results are then conveyed to the Board of Health in Chelmsford. The Board of Health reaches out and it provides follow-up with each confirmed case. They support the medical isolation, and they also will identify the close contacts. And our schools will collaborate and work closely with the Board of Health regarding the case management, including helping identify those who are close contacts. And to assist in this process, we will be asking students, family, and staff that if you do test positive, if you could notify us when you learn of that case. And we have worked very closely with the Board of Health this summer, and will continue to do that during the school year and collaborate. It is the responsibility of the Board of Health to notify anyone who is at risk, and the Board of Health will partner with the schools because it involves the schools, and we will need to know who the close contacts are at school. Just to review, if we do have a positive case, if a person tests positive for COVID-19, the Board of Health will review all this information, but we'll let them know that they will be in self-isolation for a minimum of 10 days. They also need to be fever-free with no medications such as Tylenol, ibuprofen, or Advil. And they also need to have an improvement of their other symptoms. And they will be released from the isolation by the Board of Health. So for close contacts would include students and staff who have had direct contact with infected secretions of another person while not wearing PPE, or if they were within 6 feet of another student or staff member who tested positive for at least 15 minutes in a classroom or another educational space, or on the bus, or perhaps an extracurricular activity. So in the classroom, the students and the staff within that cohort will be considered a close contact, as they may have been within 6 feet of the individual with a positive test result. So we're just being extra conservative. We want to make sure that if someone within that classroom was confirmed to have COVID, that we want to be extra conservative and have everybody be identified as a close contact. Remote learning and teaching would be instituted during that quarantine, as long as that staff member or the student felt that they were well enough to participate in the educational process. Close contacts, they'll be informed that they shouldn't come back to school until they have self-quarantined for 14 days, and they will be encouraged to test on day 4 or day 5 after the possible exposure. We in the schools have a list of the testing sites and the numbers, as well as the Board of Health has that information. If the test comes back positive, then they would need to self-isolate for 10 days for minimum, also be fever-free for 24 hours with no medication, and then have an improvement of their symptoms. If the test is negative, or that person chose not to test, it would still be a 14-day quarantine. And that is because if the person was negative perhaps on day 3, 4, or 5, they could go on to develop symptoms on day 10, 11, or 12, so it is still a 14-day quarantine. And the school will collaborate and work closely with the Board of Health to identify the close contacts and, to find out who has had close contact within the school day. And the families will be, instructed to stay home, to self-monitor, and to follow the protocol for the management of their symptoms. So for management of illness during the school day, the guidelines that were released by DESE asked the schools to have 2 separate rooms, because we wouldn't want to expose an otherwise healthy student to someone who had symptoms. So what we've done here in Chelmsford, we've created a well room and a care room. So the care room is an acronym for COVID assessment. So the well rooms will handle the first 8 issues that can't be treated in the classroom. A minor bump or bruise needs to be looked at. Any scheduled medications that a student might have, that would happen in the well room, as well as if you have a student with diabetes and perhaps they need some help managing their diabetes or their blood sugar, they would go to the well room. And the care room will handle students with illness symptoms. And the nurse will assess that student and determine the best course of action. We will ask the staff if they could please notify the nurse for any students that they want to send down, and also let us know if they, a student has said something to a staff member that's concerning that perhaps the nurse should follow up with. And the nurses will all practice the guidelines in regards to our students and staff and what the treatment will entail. When assessing students who have underlying conditions that present as possible symptoms of COVID-19, the nurses will use their nursing judgment. The students will be treated. If it's determined that they're well enough to stay in school, they would be able to return to class. If there's any symptoms that need a little bit more information and other evaluation, then that student would probably be sent home just to follow up there. So that is about it, and happy to entertain any questions or explain anything that wasn't clear.
Any questions? Donna?
Peggy, I noticed that you had put a list of testing sites on your handout in our packet.
Yes.
Are those free testing sites?
That is a good question. I know the Lowell Community Health on Jackson Street, they do offer testing at no cost. I'm not sure about Circle Health in Westford or AFC. But we could definitely, if that was a concern for a family, we could help with that and make sure that they were able to get tested.
We received an email from Mr. Henderson back on the 18th of August. Can I forward that to Peggy with some information around free testing sites and availability?
Sure.
So I'll forward that to you, Peggy.
Perfect.
Okay, I have a question.
Yep, Maria, question?
Okay, at the high school level, I could see, there's one class in elementary that, has been in contact with this potentially positive student. But at the high school level, you're talking about a student who may have attended 4 different classes or 5 different classes in the span of a day. So what happens? Everybody gets notified that they need to quarantine?
So, Sue Rosa from the Board of Health, myself and Jay, we spent a long time talking about that scenario, because if there was someone who was identified as a positive case, like in an elementary classroom, that simply would mean, students in that classroom, both cohort A and B, would go out just to be completely safe and be on the conservative side. But it would only affect that classroom at, say, the elementary. But at the high school, it does get a little bit more involved, because, as you just mentioned, the high school student may have 4 classes on Monday and then have 4 classes on Tuesday, as well as having a total of 8 teachers. So in that case, all those students and staff would be identified as close contacts, and they would need to go out. And, we thought about that, and the reason we did that was because we really want to make sure that we're mitigating the spread of this virus, and we want to make sure that we're being as conservative as possible.
Okay, so thank you for that. So let's say that happens. What happens to these students? I've read in here that essentially they become remote. Is that correct?
Yeah, let me jump in for 1 sec here, Peg. We did talk about this because and again, we were taking the most conservative approach anytime we have these things come up. So when I had presented to the school committee, we talked about that, the classes being identified as the close contacts and everyone going out. We obviously knew the high school was a little bit more intricate, but when we even had people select the learning models, that was the guidelines that they were selecting under. So after we sent that original information out, DESE did update their recommendations around who was technically a close contact. And under DESE's new guidelines, it was basically individuals who were in a particular proximity of that student in the classroom. So technically, under the DESE's new guidelines, that whole class doesn't have to go out. I honestly didn't feel, and we did talk about this, I think we need to start the year under the most strict precautions, because that's what we told families and staff that we would do. If in the future we ever wanted to, change that, or, if additional data becomes available, I think that's certainly time for a discussion. But I did not feel comfortable making that change after we'd already advertised this. And I know this is going to be difficult, particularly for the high school level. But to your first point, if that happened and the class went out, the whole class would just move to online. All of those classes would move to online for the 10 or 14 days, whatever the situation is.
Okay. So in addition to that at the high school level, if the student participated in activities, did anything that was outside of those classes where the student attended, those people would also be notified?
So the Board of Health and Peggy, and we'd all be working on this, but it's primarily the Board of Health at that point, who would be working to identify who is the close contact. So if the child at the high school level was also part of, say, an after-school club on the same day when this was happening, and they were in person as opposed to virtual, that club contacts could be identified as a close contact. We would take the lead from the Board of Health on who is designated as the close contact, and then, potentially, those kids would also go out.
Okay, so that brought up another very important point, which is, let's say that the student exhibits symptoms and it's on a remote day. It's on a day when the student isn't in class, and the family doesn't notify the school that that student has this problem. I mean, there could be days where, people have been in proximity to that student and are continuing on with symptoms. So how quickly do we know? How quickly are the people who have been in contact with this individual going to be notified?
Sue Rosa is on the call. I know her camera's not working. We'll see if she can join us. But the Board of Health works very hard, very quickly to determine the close contacts and to get in touch very quickly.
So, sorry everyone, I can't get my camera to work, but we've been doing this, as you can well imagine, since March. And I'm not gonna sit here and say that we've come across every single scenario, because on a daily basis, we continue to come across different scenarios. What I can tell you is, as soon as the health department is notified of a confirmed positive case of COVID, we make contact, and attempt to make contact with that individual. Now, I'm also going to be honest, and I'm going to say that we have had some cases where a person goes and gets tested, let's just say on a Thursday, and it has taken as long as almost a full week before we've gotten a report of a confirmed case on that person. But as soon as we get the confirmed case, we notify that person. In the case with the schools, if it's a child, it would be the parent. Anybody 18 and older, we talk to that individual themselves. And based on the conversation, we do a full case history. We find out when symptoms actually started. Some people end up finding out that they probably had their symptoms before they realized, because their symptoms were so mild. We still identify all the close contacts. We will contact all the close contacts. And based on test date, symptom onset date, we decide what the quarantine period is for contacts and what the isolation period is for the actual confirmed case. So as soon as we know, we're on it.
Okay.
And I will tell you, we get notified every single day electronically from the Mass Department of Public Health. We do not get notified of negative cases, we only get notified of confirmed cases.
Okay, so, given that, our policy internally is, of course, we have privacy issues, we have many things. But let's say a student doesn't, usually I call in and say my child isn't feeling well today, and so my child's going to stay home. Are we going to require that families say whether they suspect that there is something, that they're going to be tested or anything like that? What's our policy?
Well, we're communicating the message to families that if your child has any symptoms, to please inform us so that we can follow up with you and help you navigate this illness, and whether it's simply you need to go get a test or you might need to go see your primary care physician. But we're asking that in the spirit of, cooperation, that you'll let us know if you've been tested and if you're not feeling well.
Okay, thank you. So that just points out how important it is, because we're all relying on each other to keep this going and to keep this model in effect for everybody in our system.
Yes, and we actually, I've been working on some PowerPoints, collaborating actually with the other nurses in the district, and we'll be having like PowerPoints and some information that will be sent to the elementary parents, to the middle school parents, as well as to high school parents, just sharing information and letting them know the expectations, letting them know we're here to support them, but that we're going to have to work together to really keep our school community safe.
Okay, thank you. That's very important, great.
John, question?
No, it's just what we had said before, that it's important that everyone does what they have to do, and everyone takes responsibility, and we look out for one another, and that's how this will succeed. And it just makes sense, and if we want to add on, or we want to do anything else, it's incumbent upon all of us to do our part, to look out for one another, to societal responsibility, that's all.
And Jeff, if I can make a comment, this is Sue again. Just to stress that I've talked to Jay about this, I've talked to Peggy about this, and we talk to businesses about this on a daily basis as we get bombarded with complaints. Every single person has to do their part. So the teachers have to do their part, administration has to do their part, and everybody has to lead by example by keeping the social distance, emphasizing the hand washing, emphasizing that the masks be worn and that they be worn properly, not down around the neck, not over your mouth with your nose exposed, and that type of thing. And also educating the children. There's a lot of kids in elementary school, younger grades, that you see all the time that are, out and about doing their everyday activity and they're not wearing masks. And that's not being enforced, obviously, by parents. And if you're out and you're riding a bike and you're staying socially distant, you don't necessarily need a mask. But it's going to be important that it is stressed that from the second you arrive at school, you have to have that mask on every day, and that you will be given the breaks, like Peggy said earlier, according to the protocol.
It's crucial.
Can I, probably for Sue, are there any metrics being developed for when we might have to change models? I know this question's come up before, is like, when do we make that decision that we have to go remote, fully remote, or anything out, any guidelines out there at this point?
So I don't know if you're aware of the guidelines so the state actually, at the Department of Public Health and at the state level, they started probably within the last few weeks. Every 2 weeks, they do a 14-day look back about the number of positive cases, and they do it by every city and town in the state of Massachusetts. And based on how many cases you have, they color code you to white, yellow, green, red, I believe are the colors. Currently, Chelmsford falls in the green category, which is considered low. And that basically means 5 to 8 cases. So we would then go to the next level if we got above that. Does that necessarily mean that we would automatically, sound the alarm and say, oh my goodness, we have to go full remote at this point? No. I think we would see what was happening within our schools with our cases, because we're going to have that data at the health department. The other issue that we may run into as far as case follow-up and contact tracing is, I know that not all of the personnel and the teachers live in Chelmsford.
Right.
So it's important to know that we only get notified of confirmed cases for the town of Chelmsford. So if somebody lives in, I'll just use Dracut, for example. If somebody lives in Dracut and they come up as a confirmed case, typically what happens is it's the responsibility of either the Contact Tracing Collaborative or the Dracut Health Department to do that case follow-up. Once they contact that individual would be giving them the information to say, I am a teacher for the Chelmsford school system. They would then call my office, let us know that information, and then they would actually share that case with the Chelmsford Board of Health so that we would have access to the documentation and all that. It ultimately falls on the town that the person lives in to do the case follow-up, but we try as best we can to share cases with each other so that we know what's going on. And then we, as Chelmsford Health Department, because this individual would be teaching in our community, we would absolutely take a role in helping that other health department with contact tracing as far as involving other staff, other students, etc. It gets a little bit trickier when it's out of state. So New Hampshire, we would have to rely on the individual to let us know that they're positive. Then we can reach out to the New Hampshire Health Department, wherever they live, and ask them to share information with us.
And Sue, I would just also add, we've had a few instances where the past few weeks where if a staff member had just called to let me know that they weren't feeling well and went and got a test. And the staff member, they've been great. They've been following up with me, letting me know how they're doing and saying, you know, I've actually known fairly quickly, and they've, luckily, knock on wood, they've all been negative thus far, but we have known, you know, been followed up with these individuals, and they're letting us know pretty much, I just got my result, it's negative. So, you know, and I would assume that would be the same case, that if it turned out that it was positive, the schools actually would know pretty quickly, because we're in close contact with, you know, the individuals when we know they're not in school because they're not feeling well.
Okay. Could I ask
And
you one more
John,
question?
there may be an instant where the individual receives notification that they're positive before we get it. So that education to everyone to please notify, you know, your supervisor, Peggy, the staff, if you test positive is crucial, because again, they might be notified by their primary care doctor, and it may not have been transmitted to us electronically yet.
John, you had something?
Yeah, I had a couple questions. So, first question is, and it might have been addressed there, and I apologize if I missed it. So, if we have two kids in different grade levels, and one is quarantined, what happens with the second child?
Siblings.
Siblings?
Do you mean your siblings?
Yeah.
Yep.
So, well, if the sibling in one class, if the sibling was the one that tested positive, then everybody in that household is identified as a close contact. So that entire family
Okay.
would be working with the Board of Health. If it's a case where a second grade student is identified as a close contact, they're not positive, they're just identified as a close contact, so they're now at home learning. Their sibling and their families aren't identified as a close contact because they're not a direct link to the classroom.
Okay.
However, if that child that went home as a close contact were to end up positive, then that family would become
Okay.
the close contacts.
All right, and my second question is related to the testing. So, the best thing the state of Massachusetts could come up with is that we have to send them to a private place to the doctor. We don't have any centralized testing in Mass, no testing available specifically to schools, and I know the district doesn't really control this, I'm just asking. I mean,
No,
No.
not right now.
ridiculous. Okay, thank you.
Isn't there something?
Although I will say,
Well, it
the
is.
state did come up with a program that if a school were to have a cluster or to have, you know, quite a few number of cases, the
Yes.
state then would have like a mobile testing
Yes.
unit come to the school and do testing
Yes.
if it was like identified as a cluster.
Okay, well, that's good. I just think it's, you know, I don't know, especially when you're talking about maybe there's money involved, because that is a real deterrent from some people from getting the test. So, I don't know, we just have to make sure we do a good job of identifying what's free versus what's paid.
Yeah, there is that, I forget the exact term of it, but that program in Lowell right now that is free, that anyone can just go to.
Yep.
So I mean, that was out there. There was that one at Cross Point that closed down just because, again, volume.
Well-
We can make people aware from those when they're there.
Sure.
But they did talk about, there is like a mobile unit that can very quickly ramp up if we had an issue.
Yep.
Or you had multiple kids in the district that needed the testing.
Yep.
But,
Just,
Can I just make one more? I'm almost done.
that's okay, your questions were part of mine, so it's good.
It works out. The other thing, so anybody that knows the experience, so my wife's a wedding photographer, so Cindy's a wedding photographer, so she gets COVID tests regularly. And she tried that specific, the one in Lowell.
Yeah.
And just so people know, I mean, it's over a 2-hour wait.
Yep.
I mean, it's not an insignificant
Yeah.
amount of time to go do it. So it's not like you pop in and you pop out.
Yep.
Which also could be a deterrent for some people, right? So, that's all, thank you.
Hopefully they could call for an appointment. I know they do accept appointments in Lowell, and that might be an alternative so that you aren't waiting for 2 hours.
So just generally, because I know that this is something people in town are concerned about. So Sue, what's it like at the department, at your Board of Health right now in the town for your contacts tracing and everything else? We're adding the schools to this, more work. So can you just let us know, are you staffed sufficiently? Do you have enough manpower to do what you need to do with us now in the picture?
I'm gonna be very honest, my office is slammed. I have 2 health inspectors, myself as a health director, who thankfully I happen to be a nurse as well.
Uh-huh.
I have my public health nurse, Amanda Glasser, who's our health educator, who actually shares her time between the school and the health department, has been a key team member in case follow-up and contact tracing.
Uh-huh.
And I have an admin.
Okay. So,
Basically, we have had the blessing over the summer and at the end of the school year, when things were incredibly busy with numerous cases on a daily basis, we had several of the school nurses who joined our team to do case follow-up with us, and we are incredibly grateful for that. Those nurses have offered, as long as they're not too busy with their school stuff, to continue to assist us should we need them if we start having an extreme increase in cases. We also have the ability to utilize the contact tracing collaborative that is available to us through the state.
okay,
We, at this point in Chelmsford, have chosen to really try to not use the contact tracing collaborative because we really wanted to keep things in-house so we could have a much better handle, because once it gets sent over to the contact tracing collaborative, then it becomes their case and they deal with all the contacts, and we wanted to have more control over that in our own department. So we have not utilized them yet. If we absolutely had to, we would.
okay. Thank you.
Donnie, you had a question?
A couple.
Couple, go ahead.
If someone tests positive and then they go out for the 10 days, they're 24 hours fever-free without medication, do they need a test before they come back saying that they're now negative?
No.
No.
Keep going? Okay, thank you. And then, I have a question about the masks and for students who may not be able to tolerate them. Maybe some of our special needs students in particular may have a hard time, with the sensory aspect of wearing the masks. Will they be able to wear face shields instead?
So that's a good question. So there's some of the students, the parents have been great, and they've actually already contacted and reached out to the school to let them know that they're a little bit concerned that it might be, child might have a little bit harder time keeping that mask on. So, we're, writing up plans and thinking about the individual needs of the student. And that simply might be just getting more frequent mask breaks and getting them used to it, and maybe taking them outside for a walk, just a quick walk around to get a breath of, fresh air and then come back in. If they didn't tolerate a mask, we could certainly try the face shield, although the face shield, if someone has a sensory issue, a face shield I could see would actually maybe be a little bit harder to tolerate because it's very tight to the face and they actually get very foggy, and so it's hard to, it's not always the best option, but we'll work with each student and we'll try to help them as best we can to, navigate this.
So Peggy, if parents have individual concerns about, their students and how to help them become adjusted to wearing the mask or, concerns about them being able to keep the mask on, can they just reach out to you personally?
Absolutely, and I know at the, I have shared with some of the programs, the special education programming, some videos that there've been great resources from the special education programming, talking about, social stories and, very simple, very clear, fun little videos on getting used to a mask and why do I have to have a mask and why does my teacher have a mask and things like that. So I could definitely share those resources with any families, and we will have those resources on our PowerPoints that we're going to put on the website and share and email with families.
Right, and then the last thing is, for both you and Sue, thank you very much for all of your hard work. I can't even imagine what it must be like trying to deal with the ever-changing information that's been coming, and I greatly appreciate you both being here tonight. I know, Peggy, that you had mentioned that you're going to be putting together presentations. I think tonight's information has been incredibly helpful. So will there be information available to parents, going forward? And where can they find that?
Yes, I would like to do, a better job communicating and making sure that parents understand the process. So as I mentioned, one of them is to, very soon, I have put it together. I'm just getting some input from the other nurses, at each of the elementary, middle, and high school about what would be best to put in their programming, and we will be getting that out to families. We do have the health services page on the website for the district, and that has a lot of information on COVID-19 and resources, and we'll definitely put the presentation on the health services page as well.
Yep, I've seen that. It's incredibly helpful. Thank you. Very much.
Sure.
Okay, one more,
I
Maria?
have one more thought, and that is this. Some folks have said to me that they're concerned that their child may not be able to wear a mask, and so will become socially questioned by the other children and so on. Kind of a reverse, you're different because you're not wearing the mask, and what's the reason, and going into all that in a very public way, because children can be that way. So if whenever you're doing this, and maybe in touch with guidance or in whatever way you can do it, but just to also make sure children understand that there are going to be some children who don't wear it, and not making it personal to them, but just explaining why so they don't ask. Do you know what I mean? Not in a bullying sense of way, but in a different reverse type of way, emotionally and socially for those children.
Yep, I understand what you're saying. The teachers in this district are wonderful.
Yes.
And they, I know, will support all the children in the classroom, and that would include a child with a mask, and it would include a child without a mask. I don't believe that we will have very many, but that's not to say that there might be a child that has, a medical exemption, and the mask just isn't something that they will be able to wear. But in that case, I have full confidence that the teacher, would not tolerate any unkind words or, and they would work it out within that classroom that everyone felt supported in the room.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just one more comment, quick.
Yep.
I just wanted to echo Donna's comment. I think everybody here realizes how hard the job you have is, so thank you for the work, and, I'm looking forward to working with you. Hopefully not a lot in the near future.
Hopefully not a lot, yeah. And I want to thank, Sue Rose. So the Board of Health has been great. They've really, I've had a lot of questions. I've had her on speed dial. She's had me on speed dial, and we've worked well together. And I'm hoping that we can get the information out to the parents and the teachers as well. They just came back yesterday, and I know there's probably, a little bit of anxiety because this is a new transition. This is unprecedented going into, a school year in a pandemic. But I feel like we do have a very good comprehensive plan. As Sue mentioned, we really have to wear those masks with fidelity. We have to keep that 6-foot distance, and that's hard. It'll be hard for the kids. It's hard for the colleagues. We're happy to see each other. We've been, not in school for quite a few months, but we just have to maintain the 6 feet, and then that proper hand hygiene, hand washing, and making sure that we're doing that. and making sure that if you're not feeling well, you need to stay home.
Well, thank you,
Thank
Peggy
you.
and Sue. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sue.
Thanks, Sue, yeah.
All right.
Left
Continuing.
off in, transportation was the
Yep,
next item.
Actually,
so,
Excuse me, could we just jump back to the calendar for a second? I just had a quick question. I
On the
forgot.
what?
The calendar, I got anxious, so I forgot my question. Are we having the freshmen or the incoming fifth graders, or are they coming in for any orientation prior to the 16th?
I tell you what, when,
Mr. Murray comes on?
yeah, when
Thank
Mr. Murray comes on, talk about the handbook, can we ask him?
Sure.
Because I do know they had some kind of a introductory thing scheduled for the incoming kids.
Thank you.
I just honestly don't remember the dates. I know this is out of order, and I hate to do this to you.
You want to do Steve now?
Well, Steve and Matthew are on.
Okay.
Do you want to just do that so we can kind of be done with
Yeah.
them, and then?
Who was it now?
We're going to jump to
Well,
the,
item number 3 is the approval of the student handbooks for the year. So we have a district-wide handbook,
gosh.
and then we also have like an addendum that's high school specific. So they were in your packet tonight. Whoop, I'm gonna mute Steve before he says something inappropriate. So what we're gonna have is
Love
the first one pertains to, again, just the district-wide handbook. So this is kind of the global handbook for the district. Excuse me, Linda had gone through it for us and put together some of the adjustments that were incorporated in it using track changes. Most of the stuff had to really do with the pandemic.
Yeah, so just in order to not, really change and alter the handbook, put a couple of disclaimers in there that talked about due to the pandemic, we'll be following schedules, right? So please go to those schedules, because if we start removing too much out of a handbook, it kind of gets a little messy when you go back to your regular handbook. So we identified those areas, including busing, schedules, student times, and kept the regular pieces in there and directed people to the website. There was a couple of changes, like there was the original policy before we went over to the MASC policy site, so I made sure I changed that up. And then Peggy Gump had just had a couple of changes in regards to head lice and those protocols, and about the fact that if students are leaving, we're not gonna be able to give them like Tylenol and monitor them for 30 minutes because they're now going off to being at home. So very few minor adjustments in the K through 8, which is a K through 12, technically, and then the high school one kicks in, and then that's where Steve is at this point. And every year, obviously, we're required to go through this handbook with you and show you where those changes are, and we can certainly answer any questions we have.
And then just procedurally, once you do approve the handbook for the year, we'll obviously incorporate the changes, get it posted to the website, and it will also get converted to Spanish. We just haven't done the conversion yet until you approve the base document.
Are we asking questions on this
yeah,
handbook?
any question on the overall
Larger
handbook?
one?
Let's
The
do
larger
this-
one, not the
the
high
larger
school
one, not the high school one yet.
Okay.
Okay, so any question on the district handbook at this point? Any of the changes?
That was great, thanks.
seem
Do we want to
Okay.
approve that one separate?
I would.
Okay, so we'll take a motion to approve that, and then we'll go on to the high school.
I recommend that the school committee approve the recommended changes to the student parent handbook for the 2020-2021 school year.
Second.
Okay, any other questions or comments on the handbook? Okay, all in favor of approval? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? 5-0.
Okay. So at this point,
Make Matthew a presenter.
yeah, at this point, I would just like to, we have 2 individuals joining us, Steve Murray, the principal of the high school, and Matthew Baranavant, our coordinator for mathematics. Where did they go?
Oh, they're in there somewhere. He's probably behind the memo.
No, I can't, my meeting link. Oh, I might have shut them off. Hang
Are
on.
you sure they're not behind that? They're behind that
Are
PDF.
they?
Yeah.
Oh, there they are.
There they are. I'm like,
Sorry
I
about
can see
that.
them.
All right, so,
It'd be Matthew.
all right, so Matthew, I am making you a presenter. Matthew, I am making you a presenter.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, so Matthew and Steve, if you want to walk us through the changes you're recommending for the high school, that would be great. Okay, so, that will see changes you recommended for the high school, that would be great.
Sure. Well, first of all, welcome. Thank you for having me. I know your schedules are so full. There's a lot going on right now, so I do appreciate the time for us to come in. And
You get a lot of
a little
feedback.
echo there, I apologize.
I think Dr. Lang has to mute his microphone, that's why there's the echo.
No, I am muted.
Yeah, he's
It's on
muted.
your end, guys.
One of you guys has to mute.
I am muted. It's on you. It was you,
Let's see,
Steve.
Tia, they'll come in, hold on.
Said I'm not approving the handbook, forget it.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes,
We can hear you now.
Yep.
Is that good?
much better.
Much better. You're on,
Did he
Steve.
not hear
We can
you?
hear you.
Can you hear me or no?
Yes.
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 Nod your head yes.
We can hear you.
Jay can hear
Steve,
you.
we can hear you.
Okay, sorry. I can't hear you, so I apologize. All right, so the first thing is, once again, thank you for having us. We really appreciate this. Our first thing we're talking about is the change in our handbook is related to GPA. For many years, as I said in my memo to Dr. Lang, the high schools operated on a 4.7 scale. We kind of needed to change that. We needed to change it for two reasons. One, when we removed level 3 classes, we had to make an adjustment. And then two, looking at our peers and other schools around us, a lot of the schools are working at a 5.0 scale and higher. And we really felt, talking to our guidance counselors in relation to colleges, et cetera, that it's putting our kids at an unfair advantage in terms of that. And so what I did is I looked at our DART schools, the ones we're compared to in DESE, and of the 9 schools, 8 of them have GPA scales of 5.0 and higher than us. And the 9th one, theirs is unweighted, so theirs was not there. And where ours is 4.7 and everyone else is 5 and higher, it makes a big difference. And then in terms of local schools, Andover, Tewksbury, and Bedford as well are in that category, 5.0 and higher, with Billerica just about the same as us, slightly lower. So we felt that, one, we needed to make this change for the benefit of the kids and for our school as a whole. And then two, our current GPA schedule, it does not have, it's inconsistencies between each grade all the way up. And so I'm going to turn this over to our math guru, Matthew, to kind of explain the process we use to get to our current scale and how we are now equal and competitive with our peers. Dr. Baranova?
Yes, thank you so much, Steve, I appreciate it. So the background information here, Steve, I'm gonna just need you to mute, perfect. So the background information is that Steve and the deans bring some information to all of the coordinators, and they brought this information to us as well as others about what exactly we can do to get in line with what the other districts are doing in regards to the GPA scale. And so I'm going to share my screen now and share with you the different GPA options as to what exactly we have been dealing with. So you can hopefully see it. And it's hard to make out on the TV screen or whatever form you're looking at exactly what it is. But let me just take a minute and run you through this, and then I'll tell you about some of the statistical analysis that I did to show that this is going to be benefiting all of our students at the high school. So if you look at the light blue column, which I have, tried to zoom in a little bit, you can see our current scale, which is based on a high of 4.7, meaning that you received a score of 100 in our highest level classes, which is the AP, and it goes down on that same 100 scale, 4.7, 4.5, 4.2, and 4.0. Well, what we did is, as Steve said, is that we wanted to be able to do a 5.0 scale to be in line with what other districts are doing, but also so that colleges understand that it's a level playing field. Because although there is something we attach when we send information to colleges, many times the admissions officers don't look or realize that we are on a 4.7 scale. So what I did was I took the information of what we currently had, and mathematically it did not make a lot of sense in regards to 1 point. It would either be a 1/10 or 5/100th of a change. And I wanted to provide some sort of consistency about what the classes would be based on those particular grades. And you can see on this chart a translation between an old grade, what the GPA would be, as well as a new grade. Well, once we got this information and we made this proposal, the next thing that we did was that we wanted to share out this proposal with a variety of stakeholders. We talked to some teachers, we talked to other coordinators, we looked at the guidance counselors to get their perspective on it. Obviously, Dr. Hirsch and Dr. Lang were involved, and in fact, we even got Dr. Parks, principal of the Parker Middle School, involved to be able to take a look at this to do some analysis. And what we came up with, as you can see, is a little bit of a color-coded chart to say, well, what's the difference in the GPA for our current system as compared to our old system? And without going through all the specifics, you can visually see the green as being that the GPA would actually rise. And we would be expecting it to rise because we're going from a 4.7 scale to a 5.0 scale. So we expect the GPAs to be a little bit higher. There are a few cases where it has a white box in which the GPA is actually identical to the old and the new. And you will notice there are certain cases where the GPA is just slightly lower in one particular grade under the new system as compared to the old system. Well, this is where that the assistant superintendent, Dr. Hirsch, and Principal Murray came back and asked me, well, if it's actually going to be hurting certain students, we don't want to make a move of this nature. We want to be able to help our students and better show the learning that has taken place. So what I did was I ran some statistical analysis saying that if you look at all the possible grades of a typical CP student who takes 7 classes over the course of the year, and you randomly generate what all possible grades could be, it turns out that 99% of the students would have a higher GPA on the new system as compared to the old system. So 1% of the students would actually have the same or a lower GPA. And I do believe when I teach mathematics that we should be focusing on all children, not just certain ones. I looked at those 1% of students who were actually at or below, and it turns out that that GPA lowering is less than 1/10 of a point. So for example, if they had a 4.23 GPA, in those that happen to go down would be dropping to a 4.18 or a 4.19. So it is the ever slightest change for those 1% of students that would have a negative GPA for an average for all of their classes. So again, we came up with this information, we shared it again with all the stakeholders, and there's been a lot of people and hard work involved, but we believe that this is the best format for Chelmsford High School as a way to represent the GPA to not only families, but also for colleges that use that as a criteria. So with that, we are available for questions if you might have any on this.
Okay. Given the current climate that we're in of COVID, and the fact that this wonderful standardized testing, SATs and so on, and even the AP, which was quite different at the end of the year for many students, given that, it seems to me that the GPA is going to be much more important and much more relevant to colleges going forward in making a determination on whether a student is going to be accepted there or not, because this is in such a mess right now, and hopefully it gets corrected this year, but it is that. So I'm glad to see you making this change, because I think it makes us much more relevant in a sense of we can be compared, quote unquote, which is what these colleges are doing with students when they're assessing them. And in doing that, I think that that's really important. I guess I'm not understanding why there's these number of students that get impacted and lose a little bit of a score. It's a small amount, but to some student, that might make the difference between, I don't know, 90 and 89. So, an honor, high honors or low honors or whatever. So, why? What happens there?
Yes, that's a very good question. And if it was set up, and this is probably something that I should have shared as part of our process, but if it was set up as that it was exactly the same format, then you're right. It would be, everything would be slightly adjusted by, let's call it 1/10 or 2/10 of a point there. But what we also wanted to do, and this is where Steve did his analysis with the deans about comparing it to those DART schools, what we found is that the majority, 6 out of the other 7 of them, were assigning GPAs not necessarily based on the numerical value, but based upon a, quote, letter grade value. Well, we don't do the letter grades at the high school. We do the numerical values. So if you look at the chart, and I know it is a little bit hard to see, you will see for the typical college prep student under our new system, a 4.0 grade can be earned by a 96, 95, 94, or 93. So if you receive an A, which is a 93 to a 96, you are earning a 4.0. Under the old system, it was weighted that you would earn a 4.1. Under that model, it would be a 3.8, or then a 3.85, 3.9, 3.95, based on each numerical value. We are not only trying to change it over, but we're also trying to simplify it. And in addition, one of the things that we have a lot that we hear about is that students earned a, quote, 79, and they were just 1 point away from being able to get, that next grade there. Well, now that we're able to group those GPAs together, we believe that we're going to be alleviating some of the stress that is caused because of the grouping of how we do it for what is a B plus or a B, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, that makes sense then. Thank you.
Yep. Would you be applying this to incoming freshmen, or will you go back and do it through students who already have grades?
So it'll be moving forward, correct?
Okay. Thank you.
Moving forward, wait a minute.
Studying freshmen.
Moving forward in the sense of, if you, let's say you're a sophomore this year, what happens? Your old grades were whatever they were, and now moving forward is what you mean?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So I think to clarify what Principal Murray said is that we are changing it over for everybody now, but whatever GPA you had prior will stay that. So we're not recalculating going to the past.
Okay.
But if I'm an incoming junior, I had a GPA for my freshman and sophomore year, I was a 3.72 and a 3.66. Now, for the future, we recalculate under the new system. So what he means by going forward is that starting now for everybody, we're going to be using the new GPA.
Okay. I attended the session on college credit courses, and during that session, I remember folks brought up quite a bit that right now, a lot of students really believe deeply that, and you can see it here, that their GPA and their schools will look a lot at the AP levels, and so they may opt for that rather than going with getting the college credit. Whereas economically for some people and in many other ways for many students, it would actually be better for them to get that college credit while they're in high school. So the allocation of value to a college credit type of course is 4.3, right? If you get 100.
For the college prep, you said?
For the CP, which is the college level type of course.
Yes, that's correct. 4.3 is the high for that, yes.
That you can get, and 5 for the AP. So in essence, we still are in our system considering that an AP course will get you more. True?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
However, you could, just comparing it to our old system, the 100 in the CP class, the college prep, is a 4.2. So we're actually increasing it from a 4.2 up to a 4.3.
Yes.
And also the difference is the way colleges would allow it and value the different types of courses. So we have the luxury of having the dual enrollment at the college prep level, which would give you those college credits that we have
Yes.
at Middlesex Community College.
Yes.
And then we have the luxury of offering the advanced placement type of courses, which gives you not necessarily the college credit, but the ability to waive college classes at, based on the determination of the colleges. So I think what's nice about what we offer is no matter what option you want, we have it available for you.
Yes, and I'm glad you pointed that out, that it went up a little bit on that CP. Thank you.
Any other questions on the grading scales? Any other changes, Steve, in the handbook that we should?
No, the only changes were more clerical, changing the dates and some names, and the other one was just adding the COVID addendum. This was actually, other than the GPA, this is a small change we've had compared to what we've done in the past, so, thank you.
Any other questions on the,
I just want, do we teach Latin anymore? We still have a Latin honor society?
No, that's not there, yeah, that's we changed out. Latin is also another one.
Okay,
Yeah, that's out.
we should
Yeah,
remove
right.
that. It's on page 56.
but before you go, actually, Donna had a question that related to the high school about orientations.
Yes,
Oh.
well, yes.
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
Steve, I didn't know if the ninth graders were coming in prior to the 16th for some type of orientation or something.
Yes, so we've been working on that. Traditionally, what happens is that the first day of school, it's just the freshmen. And then all the other kids come in, sophomores, juniors, and seniors on day two. Obviously, given the hybrid and remote models and this pandemic, that wasn't the way to do it. This year, we couldn't. So what we're planning on is September 10th and 11th. It's at the end of next week for the kids to come in and do an orientation. The two things we've been dealing with are several. One is that when Governor Baker made the numbers down to 25 as max you could have, and we also now our mentors usually come in the first day. Now we're asking them to come in the summer. At the same time, this week and next week is PD work for the teachers. So when the teachers came in on Monday, we've been coordinating with the freshman teachers to make sure they're available, because they're a big part of this, and also making sure that our mentors will be there with their mentees. We don't want a mentee to come in and not have their mentor. So we have a pretty good plan going forward. We've had to make some adjustments in terms of some of the larger group activities we were doing, and now we're doing some more videos and some other smaller interactions. And so by Thursday, I'll be able to send something out to our parents on Thursday, hopefully Thursday morning, in the afternoon at the latest, letting them know about this. The two pieces we need to coordinate first was the teachers when they came in on Monday to make sure they were there, and then in the same time that the students, the mentors, would be available to meet the students. And we're going to set it up on 2 different days for cohort A, cohort B, et cetera, and then broken out in groups again per house. Each house will have its own time. And we're going to be finalizing the times tomorrow, and then the activities by Thursday morning. So we're really excited by this. And I tell you, Miss Orsini, Jen Orsini, our guidance counselor, she chairs this, and she has a really great group of kids on their board who've been coming in, and as the regs change, they've been changing. So I'm really excited about this. I wish we could have put something out earlier, but we didn't have that information, but we'll have something out by Thursday. And I really look forward to seeing the freshmen on the 10th and 11th, and then the rest of the group the following week.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to ask one. I'm getting a lot of emails and questions from parents about what hybrid looks like at the high school, what the hallways look like, what, the bus non-existence or drop-off and pickup looks like, that type of thing. So we're getting a lot of questions. What do you think in terms of timing for being able to, and I know we're in flux right now, but in terms of timing for being able to communicate this out to parents so that because when we talk here, a lot of the discussion does center around elementary and middle school, and not as much at the high school, which is very different from what's going to happen at the elementary and the middle school in many ways, because of the leveling and all that. So if you can talk a little bit about that, what you're seeing as a potential
Sure.
communication point.
Yeah, very good question. Same thing. So this weekend we'll be sending out information to all the families about what the hybrid will look like. What we're doing right now with our coordinators and our guidance counselors is looking at our remote kids, and now that we have our remote numbers, trying to put them together to see what that might look like, and then match it to the teachers who've had requests to teach remotely. And then we will put this out in terms of what the schedule will look like. As far as, and then we'll put in there the same safety protocols, things I did with the staff before they came in on Monday, put the safety protocols, the one-way hallways, each stairwell is designated for up, another one down. We'll go through all of that. The piece I'm also waiting for is I'm very excited about that. Our town was very supportive in redoing the front of our building and our parking. And in doing so, we're creating 2 lanes now because there's a lot of congestion in the back and there's a lot of congestion in the front. We created a travel lane for parents on one side and buses on the other. Now we're not having buses, but we'll still have 2 lanes of drop-offs that'll move parents quicker and faster and easier through the front of the building. What I don't know yet is when that's going to be done. I'll be getting an update at the beginning of next week with Gary Persichetti. So if by the end of the weekend, I'll put out everything on information in terms of calendar and safety protocols. I'm hoping to put out something in terms of what the flow would look like in visuals. If I don't, I'll do the visuals part and the traffic flow later in the week when I get the update from the DPW.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for talking about that.
Any other scheduled questions? Okay, I think we're good in terms of high school schedule. Great.
And so we just gotta go back to approve the handbook.
Yeah, I know, I was just waiting to see, okay. All right, so, do we want to
Except for Latin.
say goodbye to these guys and we'll?
Well, yeah. Well, do you wanna make sure it goes?
Oh, sure, all right, let's go.
Make sure
All right,
you
I'll take a
put
motion.
that in.
Latin Honor Society's out.
Good, Donna.
I recommend that the school committee approve the recommended changes to the Chelmsford High School Student Handbook Addendum for the 2020-2021 school year.
Second.
Second. Okay, any other questions, any other comments? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Okay.
All
right, thank you, guys.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Steve,
Thank
and thank
you.
you, Matthew.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Have a good night, everyone. Hope you get out early or earlier.
Too late. Yeah, I just want to hang on.
No, well, I didn't know if we ever let them go and then a question came up and I had to
Yeah.
get them back. I just figured it was quick to do.
Good point.
All right, so we can go back up now to.
And you
the-
looked at me as you said that, Andre.
What's that? I didn't
Another
either.
question.
So going back to student transportation, maybe can I ask Joanna, can you just give us a little update on kind of where we're at with that as we're getting ready to open schools?
Sure. We started transportation registration in June, and through August 28th, we had 754 riders have registered to ride the bus. And as a reminder, it's much lower than in prior years because we're transporting only about a third of the capacity due to the social distancing requirements on the buses. And then another reminder of who we have, because we can't transport all 3,400 students like we usually do, right as of today, the groups we are transporting are the 3 I've outlined in the memo. K to 6 over 2 miles, K to 6 under 2 miles who are eligible for free and reduced lunch, and siblings of grade 5 and 6 students who are at the same middle school and in grade 7 or 8 because they can share a seat. So that's where we're at, and that's the 754. We made that decision after the registrations originally started in June. So those who were in grades 7 to 12 who did register and are paid and unfortunately cannot ride the bus just yet, we have issued those refunds. And those checks were mailed out Friday night, August 28th. There were over 700 checks and about $160,000. So a big thank you to my team who helped get that out, and the town's accounting department who, because we had to enter all those new vendors so that the checks could go. We think the capacity, if we look at last year, should be at about 1,150 students, and again, we're only at the 754. It did uptick a little. I talked to Peter this afternoon, and we're a little bit higher. We're up at like 788, so not a huge jump over the weekend. So there are still families who are eligible to ride the bus who have not registered yet, so that's always the wild card. And that's also on the one-page summary that's attached. If, just looking forward here. Then just a reminder, so we're, at some point, you know, we have to design the routes. And so they're pretty much ready to go. And we'd hope to send out the bus passes Friday, based on what we know today, because we're getting kind of close here to second week or mid-September. But we can always add, you know, but we do need to get the word out to those families who have registered, the 788, what their bus is, and get that going so we're ready to roll on the first day students are here. Any questions?
I was just going to add, like, one of the challenges we always have is, particularly with even this group of students who don't have to purchase a bus pass, there's no, like, incentive under the early bird program to pay. So we will historically see, you know, the weeks leading up to school, people realizing that school is coming back and I need to go and register my pass. So we're reluctant tonight to go and recommend adding additional kids because we know that there's capacity or eligible riders who potentially just haven't registered yet. But I think as we hit that first day of school and the first week of school, we'll be able to see how many other riders are out there that fall in these categories that might register. And then we'd be ready to discuss, you know, kind of a third wave or a tier of riders to consider. And after we kind of just provide this overview tonight, wanted to start talking about conceptually if there's other groups you want us to start doing some legwork on to pull numbers together for, to see if we can, you know, add what it would look like if there were like natural cutoff points and things like that. But to Joanna's point, a lot of work really did go into processing those reimbursements, just getting the bus routes ready to go. So it's great that we can get that out there. And I think busing wise, we should be in decent shape for the start of the school year.
So, can I ask a question on the memo?
Of course.
It says the level of riders would require at this time, if it's 1,150, it requires 27 buses at the elementary level and 19 buses at the middle school level, and we have 29 buses?
We're under contract for 29.
So that means we can actually increase at the middle school by 10 more buses? I'm not getting this. What am I missing?
So we always lock into the number of buses we need to contract for based on the elementary runs.
Okay, but we have available to us 29 buses with
Correct,
this company.
correct.
So that means that we could, and even in elementary, make 2 more buses available.
Yeah, but I think I understand what you're saying, but I know there's potentially 2 buses there, but we really need a week or 2 to run these runs to see how this is gonna work. We may need to add another run if we're finding out that for whatever reason, traffic-wise, congestion-wise, we need to split up a run. So I wouldn't look at just needing 27 right now and having 29 available. I wouldn't say go for first week of school, go adding another bus or 2 or another group of kids, because we'd have to see where they fall. What this is saying to me is we may have some additional capacity within the middle schools.
Yeah, 10 buses.
Right, to be able to potentially look at another cohort of students to be able to add.
Okay.
So I think what we need to do is start to come up with a list of, all right, if there is capacity, what groups of students are we prioritizing, right? You know, we need, so that if that potential's there, then we know, okay, this is the next group and the next group and the next group.
Okay, but as of right,
I think he's saying is we need to see this run out and then see where our spaces are and where our prioritized list would fit into those spaces.
Okay, but I can see it for 2 buses, no question, at the elementary level. My question is, if we have 10 available at the middle school level, that's a lot of buses available that we haven't added anybody into for the start of the school year. That's quite a bit. I mean, leaving 2 to play with because you need that flexibility, I totally understand. But this is a lot of buses still available. And then, of course, I'm going to ask if we've considered at all about the high school. So, to me, transportation, if we're going to do the hybrid, is so important. So I really want to make sure we've explored all of the possibilities. And, if that's what we have available, then that's what we have available. And yeah, it's a lot more work, definitely, because look at what Desi's put on us as requirements.
Right.
It's for safety purposes. It is definitely a lot more work, but this means access for kids.
So
There
there's really
are-
2
yeah.
things we're looking at, right? We're trying to see, as we're going forward, one, if we need to add any additional buses because of traffic, things like that. And then this other group of students that has not registered yet, correct?
Well, the
So-
real wild card is that second.
Right, so once we can have that nailed down, and a lot of times this doesn't happen right till the last minute, then we would have a better idea of how many buses we actually have left. It seems a little uncertain at this point.
It is. I mean, that's we have to lock into something. This has been a moving target all summer.
Right.
So we need to lock into the runs to get our school year going. I don't want you to think, Maria, that we just have
Okay.
like 10 buses like sitting around
It
at the middle
seems a
school
lot
level.
to me.
But I know, but we still have to see where our cohorts are gonna fall out. We then have to, if we do have runs that are just taking too long to get to the school because now they might be backing up against the middle school runs, we might need to cut a run in half and actually separate it out onto 2 different buses to make our times for the elementary
Okay.
school. There really are a lot of moving parts the first couple of weeks, but what we wanted to kind of signal was that, if all the students don't register, who potentially could, right, because we're always gonna be on the hook. Someone could come out of the woodwork because they do qualify, and we're gonna have to provide them a bus. But if that doesn't happen and we have some capacity, what would the next groups of people we wanna consider that we can then go run some numbers on to potentially add to another group of runs? And maybe that one would start around Columbus Day. I don't know the exact dates, but we have to walk into this to get us going.
I still think that 10 buses is a lot, but, you have to do it, you're saying that that's what you can make available. The other thing I don't understand is, how does this work if, God, please let it happen, in January or in December, we're all back to school. If that's so, and we don't have any more remote students, out of those remote students, how many fall under the law that we would have to offer busing to?
I'm sorry, I totally lost you on that one.
So the 1,500 students that are remote right now,
Right.
the 30% or so that are out there just doing remote, okay? Out of those,
Oh,
how
many would have to
many of
get
them
added?
potentially need
I
to
don't
ride the
know.
bus?
We'd have to look at the data on, we'd have to cross-reference their address to figure out if they're over or under 2 miles. We haven't done that.
Right,
at this
so
point.
that would be the only thing that I thought would possibly, you'd
Well-
have to reserve something for,
Maria, if we're
because,
going back full, then I'm gonna guess the guidelines
Yeah,
for
if we go back
transportation would be
full.
suspended. It wouldn't matter.
Right,
We
yeah.
could fill up the buses.
So if we
oh,
can get
oh,
everyone
well,
back.
that's
then-
possible, that the guidelines aren't there anymore.
If-
That would be
Yeah,
great.
if we ever got to go back, I don't
Yeah.
see us being able to go back in person until the bus guidelines are lifted. So if we weren't at a third capacity and we could fully fill the buses,
Yeah.
then I know that we could go back to the old way of doing things.
Well, including a bus run for the high school?
If we didn't have capacity issues, yes.
Okay, I still don't understand why we're not doing that, but, because you said about timing.
Right.
Okay, I understand timing, but we're getting, questions from parents, can I drop them off at 6:30 or 6:45 because we need to head into work and the school's not gonna be open and so on. There are so many things there that, you know, offering something to the high school would really make a huge difference on. That, you know, even if there's a cost in having people having to clean or do whatever they needed to do, to really try to consider it, I think would be important.
So that could be one of our recommendations.
Right.
That could be a recommendation.
Right, so, I don't know.
Just,
Go
I
ahead,
just
John,
had
Donna.
one other quick question. If we add another group, we're gonna have to redo all the routes again, correct?
I mean, not from scratch. It really depends on, there's so many complications because right now
Right.
too, you're also dealing with cohorts.
Right.
But no, routes may have to be tweaked. Hopefully, it wouldn't be starting from scratch.
Okay.
You might just be, you know, if anything, and had kids that were closer to the schools, like right now, we're transporting from further away.
Okay.
So conceivably, you're driving down the road, you might be able to pick up more kids on your way.
Okay.
You might have little adjustments to the routes, but what we'd want to do is set the routes, set a particular date, and then be able to communicate that to parents, like 2 weeks from now, your bus stop is gonna, you used to be an 8 o'clock pickup, now it's gonna be 8:10.
Okay.
You know, we'd want to be able to do that to just kind of forecast for parents that that was happening.
All right, because I just, you know, I recognize that every time we add another group, we're potentially changing, you know, times,
Right.
maybe bus stops, I don't know. But, you know, it is a possibility, so.
Right.
And not that I'm saying that we shouldn't do that, I'm just saying that we have to recognize that this is gonna be part of the process.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's another consideration too. I mean, there could come a point in time where you say, you know, this is just too many tweaks. We've moved too many times that now, yes, we could maybe get X number of kids more on, but we've just upset, you know, 2,000 people's lives and it's not, you know, worth it. This is what we just wanted to kind of surface for right now. I really do think we just need to lock into the routes we have for the start of the school year. But as we're able to add additional students, like what's the priority? And I get what you're saying about the high school, I really do, we've talked about this. It's just, if we were to add runs at the high school, I do not think it is physically possible without going to an earlier start time. So like, that would have to be part of the conversation, and some people might say, yes, they'd want that, and other people might say, no, absolutely not, I don't want that. Excuse me, that would have to be like part of it, because we're basically moving even the middle school start time by about 20 minutes to be able to give us time for the cleaning and to be able to get the elementary runs in time. So that's, excuse me, that's where it becomes complicated. But if that's a scenario that you want to involve, we would just have to figure out at the high school level, how do we survey, you know, staff and students and get data on that to then run the numbers?
I think you're just trying to set a baseline, and then we can add to it later.
Well, I think this is the baseline.
Yeah, no, this is the
So-
baseline, and then we can add to it if we need to.
Right.
Right.
So, thoughts on what are the groups then? I mean, I have a list of what I would
We already
consider, huh?
Did we already talk about free and reduced lunch? That was.
We already did that one.
That one,
You know,
okay.
Let's hear what your list is.
So I had other special population students that aren't receiving transportation, so special ed, ELL, within the middle school, elementary schools. 7th, 8th graders outside of 2 miles, you know, and then, you know, other elementary or other, next level would be other elementary students or other middle school students if we had the capacity there. And then another one just come up is children of staff members, and then the high school. I mean, those are the 8 different categories I had, but I don't know if anybody thinks of any other ones. I'm not prior to, you know, giving them any particular order, but those are like the 8 different groups I could come up with. I don't know if anybody has any other
No,
thoughts.
some of mine were included in what you already have.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you review yours one more time with me?
Yeah, other special populations, so special ed students not receiving it as
Yep.
part of the IEP, ELL students not receiving it as part of their program, 7th and 8th grade students outside of 2 miles. And then again, capacity-wise, if there's more room for other elementary school students or middle school students, children of staff members, and then high school students.
The elementary, again, we're gonna look at all this. The
Yeah.
elementary is gonna be very tough.
No, I agree.
Because if we're already at the, basically the capacity of the 27 buses, I don't know that there's like another wave we can reasonably pick up. But, obviously, you know, the 7th and 8th grade is, should be considered just because of where we're at number-wise. And then the high school.
So, any other thoughts on I think I covered most of them.
Well, let's create a 13th grade. No, I'm only kidding. I mean, those are all the possibilities.
On the separate, I'm sorry.
Can I just ask a follow-up question, Dennis,
Yeah.
on your special populations? Did you have a mileage component, or
Do I have a mileage component on that?
like, just any special
I think,
population?
you know, yep. I think any mileage, you know,
Thank you. Because, no, this is really helpful,
Yeah.
because we can start running some numbers once we marry it up in
Yeah.
X2.
Right. Well, the over 2 miles would already be there, right?
Right, 2 miles apiece.
So we'd only be worried about the special populations under 2 miles, K to 6? And then if
Oh,
we were
the
to,
7th and 8th.
7th and 8th.
7th and 8th, right?
So like maybe, okay, I got it. 7th and 8th, probably first.
Yeah.
Yep, okay.
all right, so if we could get a little data on that, and then if the capacity's there,
Right.
then we can have that discussion of, you know, where we want to use that capacity.
So given that this is the drop-off in the morning at the high school, are you going to have police officers available? I can see what the mess is gonna be over there. So what are we gonna do about that? Because it's gonna be serious.
Yeah, let's see what Steve comes up with, because that was one of the things that he had talked about he was gonna be providing to parents, is like the, not road maps, what do you call it, but like the traffic kind of patterns and maps. You know, we have a school resource officer at the high school who's always available to help us during the day. I'm sure, even early on, until people kind of work through the kinks, because we got the whole new driveway and everything we gotta work through. I'm sure no one wants to have a backup on, you know, Richardson Road, so I'm sure they'll help us. But the high school has been working on this, so let's see what they come up with for their maps, and he did say that was gonna come out to you.
So the project is gonna be completed before school starts?
Yeah, it should have actually been completed. They hit a couple of snags. I think they're just waiting to put the top coat down. But I do know that when I talked to Gary last, they know that they have to get this done either this week or next week, because right now all the staff are parking in the student spots out back, but we need to free up that front of the building for the staff to be able to park. So,
Okay.
yeah, I'm anticipating end of this week, early next week. The top coat goes very quick. It's not a long process. It's probably, he's got about a day and a half, just weather permitting, to get it done.
Ani, you had a question?
Yeah, have we considered adding crossing guards, particularly at dismissal? I know we may have more kids walking home at that point.
At the high school?
No, at any of the, you know, I think of on like Route 4 at South Row or in the back.
You know, we have, I think, like 3 budgeted crossing guards in the district. One is out in front of McCarthy. One is down near Harrington, kind of the front of the high school, the parking lot there that would kind of cross the Harrington kids to Parker. And I forget where the third one is, but we actually have not been successful in hiring and attracting candidates to those jobs, just because of how few hours they are. But you know, if you have particular areas you want me to look at, I'd be happy to assess it for you.
Yeah,
A lot
Route
of it
4,
is.
I think South Row.
But
right
didn't
in front-
didn't
right
they
in front
just
of the
get a
building.
new?
I thought that we put one there. For some reason, I thought we had assigned a South Row crossing guard. But,
When they got the that automated not stop sign, the crosswalk sign, the flashing ones,
lights, yeah.
I think they got that.
okay. But if we could just monitor that, please, because, you know, if parents are relying on their kids to walk or ride bikes, I just want to make sure that, you know,
Yeah.
they're safe
I
on
think-
some of these main roads.
Right. I think we're gonna see a lot more car traffic. You know, I think we'll see a lot more parents dropping off. I don't know that you're gonna see a lot of bike traffic or like walkers on Route.
Route
is it
4,
Route
yeah.
4. But, we'll be mindful of it the first couple of weeks. And I know we usually work with the police department like that week leading up to the kids coming back too, and start to broadcast some of the, you know, watch for children, school bus time, you know, plan accordingly, give yourself some extra time type messaging. So that will start to go out the week after next.
Some parents have written asking about bike racks, and if we're gonna make more bike, storage available at the middle schools and at the high school.
If necessary, that's not a big thing to do, but I know the high school has good
Not that
rack. I
much.
can look into the middle schools for you.
It's both middle schools and the high school.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't, be a deterrent. Like, if there was the need that was there, that would be an easy fix.
Okay, anything else on transportation? Okay.
All right. The last item on this particular agenda, we had just asked for a little bit of an overview, so I'll ask Linda to just provide it with you, about just some of the professional development and training our staff are receiving over the first 10 weeks of, not 10 weeks.
10 weeks, wow.
The first
you are
10 days,
generous.
10 days of school.
We're a very generous district. Right, so with the up to 10 days that was going to be available for teachers based on what we ended up talking about, and obviously we now know that the first day of school is going to be the 16th, so that will give us the days. We started the whole process of, professional development, obviously starting with the safety protocols first, and also school protocols. So what was really great is that we have obviously Steve Servin from the town of Chelmsford, he's the safety officer, as well as Peggy Gump, and you saw how wonderful she is. She actually put together a presentation for the teachers as well as Steve. So on Monday, everybody was able to see his presentation, be able to kind of go out in some breakout groups, talk about what they saw, how that applies to them, get oriented. And then Peggy was taped as well, and she was able to give the same message out to the district that Steve did for his. And the nurses facilitated a Q&A right after the fact, and that was super helpful for the staff. They really liked her presentation. Obviously, you see her style, same with Steve. They're very, unassuming, relaxing, getting people into, just thinking about what's happening around you and how does that apply to you, and then letting the staff actually talk it through into their own personal space. So that was very helpful. And then even starting today, the schools started with their own protocols. There's going to be some one-way hallways, especially at the high school level. I even went the wrong way already. There was upstairs, downstairs. I had to come back down the stairs, go up and around. So just getting used to your routines, where your spot is in your for your classroom and for the people that you're working with. So those have been the past couple of days, and they'll continue on. Also sprinkled into all of this is the technology training. And what the technology department did is they made a calendar of who they were going to see, what grade levels, or departments. At the high school, they ended up doing it by wings rather than by departments because they're not all in the same spot. So rather than kind of do the cross-contamination, they took a whole wing of people to help start the whole technology piece for them. So they're set up between now and right now it's the 14th, could go as far as the 15th, with making sure that they not only give direct professional development to the grade levels and the departments, but then there's also follow-up sessions. So you may have received your training, but you still have more questions. So there's a lot of follow-up time in the following week and into the 2 days before now school starts, where people can come in after what they've learned, tried a few things out with their colleagues in their classrooms, and they still have some questions. And those will also continue on throughout the school year, because the technology department tends to run weekly professional development on certain topics, and that has really been the focus of that. We've asked the department coordinators to then follow up for their department specific after that. So what does this technology look like for a math teacher, for the fine and performing arts teacher? So we're making sure that here's the overview, but then here's what it looks like in your classroom. If you need to follow up for specific things, you have time for that. And then what does it look like for your specific role as a teacher in the school district? So the other thing that we did is we have a Google Calendar, so trying to just whittle through the miasma of having all of these sessions and nobody knowing what's going on. It's all populated in the Google Calendar, and what I tried to do is just give you a quick snapshot. That's become much larger than what you currently have in your packets. But what you'll see is that they're color-coded. Obviously, we've got some, purples are going to be for the elementary level. Anything you see in blues, middle school and high school receives orange. And then all district things we kind of designated as green. But we wanted to make sure, too, that there's some teacher time in there. So that PLC time, and then what do teachers need just specifically for themselves, so that they're not just doing professional development from walking through the door to walking out, then their heads will spin. So built into all of this is that time for them to process what they're doing and get their rooms ready and talk to their colleagues, what they're concerned about, how they're sharing information, talk to the new staff that may be coming with some pieces of professional development that they received in their district or through their programming. And then we also had just built in to make sure that they had some time to do their staff sign-offs, which are what we have to do every single year. So this is just one little snapshot of the first 10 days, whatever we have at this point. And then what we'll do is build out this calendar, and then obviously into October, our we're keeping our professional development days through the district, as you can see, we're just switching them to Wednesdays, because it's not just like, okay, we gave you this, good luck, we'll see you in June. It has to continue. The main focus of our professional development for the school year will be on the technology and the pedagogy and how to deliver the curriculum in these different models that we have, and just to support each other as we go through the process.
Okay, any questions on professional development?
How's it going on, is it Fontas, the new actual curriculum at the, elementary level?
Yep.
How is that being incorporated into all this?
So I didn't blow that up for you, but I can tell you right now that starting next week, we have sessions already set up for overviews for our K through 4 teachers for the Fontas and Pinnell, and then as well as for foundations. So they're gonna work with them by grade level. So Kelly had already set up those times. So they've received professional development before they left. They created an academy for the teachers to access all of the videos and all of the professional development over the summer to refresh themselves as needed, you know, and as they had the ability to do so. And then now the company is gonna be coming back in starting on the 8th, right? Is that where I'm at? Today's only the 1st. So on the 8th, we already have our sessions set up for our for foundations, and then on the 9th is Fontas and Pinnell. And then they are already built into our professional development calendar, so the 23rd will be their next session with the companies. The full, we also have another session for them in October as well as November, because we front load our PD in the beginning of the school year for that, because they have to actually do it. So those were already booked prior to having these 9 extra days. So they're getting an additional day for both programs because of these 9 extra days that we received up front.
Has the company come up with anything that, gives more online content, or they've come up with some things?
Yep, so the teachers have access to everything online, so they can project through Google Meets. And anything right now, the only thing that they can't project with the new reading program is the guided reading books for the students to access. So they're working on making those accessible, but everything else the teachers would be able to then share digitally with the students. We also are looking into, and we're pretty sure we're gonna purchase them, so that's the only book that's shared by students, right? Everything else is usually teacher directed, or the students have their own things. There were these, we saw it because we all follow these Fontas and Pinnell actual social media sites, and they've made like these plexiglass pieces that you just can put up and over the reading book, and then all you're doing is washing off the plexiglass. So that's a pretty good thing for us. Oh, did I mention that I was buying those? They're beautiful. So little things like that to just to minimize any contact on any of the pieces of the students that are sitting in school those days.
Okay, and for the students who are working remotely, and need access to the book and so on, what's the plan for that? How do we?
Yep. So the teacher can either, if they're using the online resource, they can flip their Google Meet. If not, they can use a document camera and put it right up and over the book, and that will project onto the board, and then if they flip it on the Meet, the student will be able to see it.
Okay. Is that, if they pick up books and so on, are we also handing out supplies to those students who are working remotely? How are we doing that?
Yeah, so we found, so let's take, for example, the foundations. They have the tiles. Students have individual tiles, but we don't want them going back and forth to school, because you can imagine they'll end up in backpacks. So we were able to purchase, it's Wilson is the company that makes it. They made student packs to be able to go home and stay home. So anything like that, when it comes to any type of manipulatives for the kids, we're working with the companies to get their, smaller sets of them, things that can go home and just stay home, and we don't have to worry about them going back and forth to school. So then when they come to school, their tiles and their separate packets are there for them, and at home they can just access it at home.
And at the same time that they pick those up, are they picking up the supplies we purchased for elementary students and middle schoolers?
Yeah, I've been watching some of the distribution lists. I don't have all the fine details, and I don't know if anybody's given you any additional information, but they're already setting up processes for how to deliver those materials to the kids. I know this summer, teams of teachers came in to help to, Ziploc and pack them all up, and I've seen them in different places. And they're getting them set up for how because the last one I saw was they'll be delivered to your classroom, and they'll be there for the students to pick up on their first day. So that's all being distributed as we speak.
Thank you.
Yeah, which is, so when we did buy all the supplies, we bought them for everyone, whether the kids were in person or
Right.
remote, so
Yeah.
they will be picked up.
Okay.
Other questions on PD?
How are we getting feedback from the staff as to whether or not the professional development that we're offering is, hitting the marks in terms of whether or not it's helpful, what they need going forward, and those kinds of things?
Yeah, so the good news is at least people are, open and tell us how things are working. So through the department coordinators, they're finding out like what's working, what isn't working, how do we shift this? And then if we have to open up different sessions because let's just say there's a concentration of some major topic, then that session would then be open for the teachers to be able to have help. The nice part about even Bill's system for technology, as well as having department coordinators and the coaches, if someone's having something specific, he has people that can actually go into the classroom and actually model it or troubleshoot it right there and then. Same with all of our coordinators and our coaches, we would just send them to the classroom so they don't have to just wait. Or if they're not available for a session, because, obviously PD days aren't gonna start until the 23rd after these days happen. You don't wanna wait 2 weeks. We wanna make sure that somebody has exactly what they need.
And do we have, are the paraprofessionals getting the exact same training, or are they getting training that will be specific to the type of job that they have in working with students?
I know they've been joining in on the sessions, so it would be receiving probably the same, but then they probably have to handle like the little nuances for what does this look like for a paraprofessional opposed to the classroom teacher.
Okay.
I was just gonna mention too, like even when it comes to the tech type stuff, we did add the 2 extra positions at the middle schools this year to be able to free up the ITSs and really go and support teachers in classrooms. And even this fall, as they're rolling stuff out, they'll be able to do that. And then we have the additional person who's basically floating between the 2 middle schools and the high school as well to help with the one-on-one teachers, just to, again, acclimate themselves, use the technology. So they will have someone who can go into the room and actually support them. This fall, it doesn't all have to be done by the start of the school year, but those resources are there to be helpful as well.
And as you know, like our grade level teachers and department meetings are pretty supportive, so anyone that has like a skill in something, they're usually the first person to jump up and be like, I'll come show you how to do that, I'll help you work it out.
Is there any way to, I think one of the greatest concerns that I've heard is the synchronous teaching part. So, I can't see it either. I can't visualize it. I can't visualize it even more, how it's gonna work at the high school level, to be quite honest, because of the different levels of classes. So, if you take it level by level, what would a synchronous day look like at each one of these levels? Is there anything out there that shows students, parents, teachers, what is visualized for a synchronous day?
Well, I do know that one of the things we've been working on is trying to put together like a video of what this would look like teaching-wise. We may or may not have kids in there, we may have the teachers acting as the students, just because we wouldn't necessarily put student information out there. So we've been trying to put like those video pieces together, but the teachers have actually been doing like, that's been part of the tech training, is like, let's teach you how to do this, now kind of go in and start brainstorming what this looks like in your classroom, what's working, what isn't working. Like I had heard camera positions the other day, so people are working on, okay, well, where are those camera positions gonna go? And then just the little nuances of like, how do I flip my classroom over to the board if I don't have this technology piece? So they're trying to address each individual's technology that they currently have in their classroom, right? So we talked about clear touch TVs opposed to having just the projector, right? Or just using your desktop. So everybody has a piece of technology or a camera that we have to address all the different ones. But for the parents to see, we're trying to work on a video, and if it's something that would be appropriate for them to take a look at, that would be super cool.
Yeah, because one of the things that somebody said to me was that when a child is home and you've got this synchronization, they can see what you're sharing on the screen, but not the teacher. So they're only seeing one thing.
Well, it depends. They can have the picture-in-picture on if they want to have that, or sometimes you don't need to see the teacher, like you need to see the problem, and then the teacher flips back to themselves.
You can do both. And
So similar to what you kind of saw today in GoToMeeting, like Matthew was a presenter, we made him a presenter.
So maybe they don't have that, they didn't
sorry, what?
understand it. So, they may not have understood it.
Yeah.
But this is what I heard, that, at the elementary level, the concern was that you couldn't have the teacher actually explaining it visually and live in the classroom. what's going on the screen, what the person is showing on the screen, so.
Oh, yeah, no, you could do that through Google Meet, you just flip it through and then you.
Okay, so maybe there's, more
There's a
development
thing
will
called
happen.
Jamboard on Google, on the Google G Suite, it's called Jamboard, and that's basically your whiteboard, and that projects on, and you can see what the teachers are doing.
And you can see both the teacher and the whiteboard.
Depends on if they have picture-in-picture on. It depends on what they need to see. If you need them just to see the
Okay.
problem, you look at the problem. You might not need to see the teacher.
Okay, so maybe these people, the folks that talked to me didn't understand the technology yet.
You know what would be helpful too, and we put this out back in the spring when all the remote learning came, is we put, and it's still sitting on the website for people to access under technology, is Google is really good about having parent-friendly videos and things for them to watch, so they would actually be able to see some of these different type of technologies in action. So referring parents back to that might be a good idea, like if we're putting out a communication, just to remind them that these things are still available for them to actually access and take a look at as well.
Is any of the professional development going on in a couple weeks dealing with the emotional well-being of the teachers? Because this is very stressful.
All the staff.
All the stuff, right? I shouldn't just say teach, I'm sorry, but
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the focus obviously is the SEL parts for the students,
Right.
and I honestly, they tend to be for everyone. Because once you start talking about like social emotional awareness and health, it ends up being like everybody's social emotional awareness and health. And I know that a lot of those meetings are addressing those things, and just putting that messaging out there that, we're here to support you, being available, answering the questions, emails, late night texts of someone just freaking out. Jay and I had an opportunity of going through the schools, and I've been asking people, like, how's it going? They're like, I feel better. Like they're seeing it now, and they're talking to people, and they're realizing, okay, nothing bad has happened. So I think that's just gonna take a little bit of time, but there's no like specific like SEL for the teachers. Typically on our opening day, we would have had like, kind of like that, kind of that person's the motivator. To like, you can get through this, but we don't have anything very specific, just like it's time for SEL for teachers. It's just gonna be naturally as we start doing a lot of the supporting pieces and just listening, a lot of listening.
Some companies are offering, in HR, some, counseling and so on available to teachers, because I think what happens is this is a totally new definition of what your role, how to do your job. So I know that, there are bigger companies that are offering that type of thing. I don't know if this is something that's available in school systems.
Yeah, we have the employee assist program that if anybody ever needed individual counseling, they could do something like that, but we're not setting like a set of counselors to descend on a school or, schools at this point, because this doesn't seem to be a need for that.
I mean, our schools, I really do think, do a lot of work just around, just building culture, supporting their staff. This is just going to be a new time for everyone, but I think, when you have staff meetings or faculty meetings and department level meetings, everyone is going to be taking, the temperature. How are you doing? How can we help you? Is there something that's needed? That is going to be happening across the district. This is new for all of us. Again, even though last spring was, came quickly and everyone had to adjust real quickly, this is still, I was mentioning earlier, like the first year that we're really going to be doing more of like full-time, hybrid teaching. We haven't done that before. So people are just going to have to learn some new things. We're going to all learn together and just support each other.
any other questions, comments?
Well, it's kind of a question regarding staff, not necessarily professional development, more related to facilities. But our staff are in the buildings, correct?
Correct.
Right, okay.
Yep.
So, do they have everything? I don't want to wait till the kids arrive to make sure the staff has the necessary cleaning products and hand sanitizing stations and whatever materials they need. Is that in place now for them? Because, obviously we want to keep them safe too and make sure that they have all the materials available. And do they have places where they can secure their belongings? Because I know we took a lot of furniture out of the room. Are all of these things in place for them now?
Yeah, that's what they're all figuring out now that they're back to school. But when it comes to like, say, your PPE and things like that, like it's all at the school level and it's being distributed.
Okay.
Masks and sanitizers and things like that. Peggy mentioned earlier, some additional like hand washing stations. Like we have obviously the bathrooms in all the school for that, but even in the middle schools, And the elementary schools, like in the modulus, in addition to the bathrooms, so kids don't have to necessarily go all the way in, we purchased, and I do believe they're actually arriving Friday, but like extra hand washing stations that are portable, just so the kids can do an extra hand washing in the hallway. So, I mean, like, that stuff isn't there right now, but it's coming in, obviously, Friday. But, no, we really are in very good shape on the other PPE type equipment. It's getting rolled out. Peggy's, like, safety training, there's components to talk about, proper use of a mask and hand washing and hygiene, and yes, that is all being rolled out now that the staff are back.
Okay, so do the teachers actually have the stuff, any staff actually, in the classrooms right now available to them to be able to clean before they leave, at the end of the day, that kind of thing?
The teachers themselves right now would not be, like, the cleaning companies would be cleaning.
Okay, so I understand that. I guess I'll use me as an example. I'd want to make sure that I was, hitting my hands with hand sanitizer a couple times a day. Do we have that in the classrooms for the teachers? I'd probably, if I was sitting at my desk, I'm washing it down before I leave, that kind of thing. Are those materials available to teachers right now to be able to use in the classrooms?
Mm-hmm. I would believe it is. Honestly, I didn't go looking while I was in the schools today. I've seen it in pallets in the schools, so whether it was delivered to every single classroom, I know it's in process. Like last spring, every individual teacher, had their own cleaning product for the rooms. Like, that hasn't gone anywhere. So no, there should be no issues on that front when it comes to the cleaning products or the paper towels and all that.
I've been using it, whichever I can.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it's available to them.
I know it's at the entryways, because when
Yeah.
I walk into the school, I do the sign-in, and you have the hand sanitizer right there. I just have not looked in individual classrooms.
And so, we did originally have Brian Curley on our agenda to come in and talk about this. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it tonight, so if people would like, we can have him come to the next meeting.
Yes.
He just wasn't available tonight to do it, so if
Yeah.
that's, I
Yes,
can just make sure.
And if you could address the question of what happens in between classes when,
Yeah, those are the type of things.
when students switch at the high school, because that is one of, concern about who's wiping down what.
Yeah,
That'd be
so
great.
We'll just make sure.
Yeah.
And I talked to him, he's willing to come in, he just couldn't do it tonight, so.
Yeah, he had a previous commitment, but we can get him into another meeting.
That'd be great, thank you.
All right, anything else on professional development? Okay, all right, so, item number 2 was done on the agenda.
Yep, well, we can skip ahead to
I know,
4 now.
All right, so, item number 4, school committee self-evaluation. So last meeting, we discussed the process of coming up our goals, how it's gonna have to be a little bit different this year, just of the way things going. But, people still felt it would be worthwhile to do a self-evaluation. So included in the packet is this, MASC school committee self-evaluation. It's fairly simple to fill out. So if people wouldn't mind filling it out, over the next week or so and sending me a copy, and then I can kind of put it all together for our next meeting. We kind of take a look at it. If this particular format doesn't work for you and you want to do it in a Word document, if you want to make comments, whatever. So that's there. And, if you get to meet next Tuesday, Wednesday, again, it's not a lengthy document or difficult. You're just basically looking at different areas and deciding how you feel to do it in those particular areas, so. Any questions on that particular item? Okay, all right. So our last item is policy updates.
Yep, this I looked into at the last meeting for you, and I had read the guidance from MASC wrong the first time I went it. We did do a policy on masks and face coverings at the last school meeting, and then they had recommended this kind of emergency interim policies, and when I read it the first time, there were all different subsections that touch on our existing policies, and I thought they wanted you to go through and make temporary amendments to the individual policies. They're not recommending that. What they're recommending is you actually vote to implement this new EBC supplemental policy that basically touches on all of these other policies in the interim. So you would basically be making this policy that would stand during the pandemic. When the governor would release the state of emergency in the Commonwealth, then basically the policy goes away and all the different little subsections go away. So we would not be amending actual into the policy document. You'd be approving a whole new policy, this file EBC supplemental, that covers the interim guidance on the COVID pandemic. So I went through, there was one policy that was referenced in here. or in the MASC guys that we don't happen to have when we went through the codification system. It was related to school year. We do our school year somewhere else. So I just omitted that because we didn't have a policy to reference. So every other policy aligns properly to ours. And again, this is the MASC recommendation that the school committee enact this. So I brought it back before you tonight.
And just looking at it, I mean, a lot of these things are just tweaks that we might need to make because of where we are, whether it's time on learning or how we're doing grading and attendance policies and things like that. So rather than having to go back to each individual policy and make a change and then change it back in, this kind of allows for a little bit more fluidity, I guess, in the different things that are mentioned here. So I don't know what people think about it or if they've had a time to look over all the different elements of it. Comments? Everybody
No.
comfortable with this as, okay, all right, I'll take a motion.
I recommend the school committee adopt the supplemental policy ECB from the Massachusetts Association for School Committees, effective to the end of the emergency as declared by the governor.
EBC, I believe.
EBC.
What is it?
EBC, I believe.
EBC, sorry.
That's all. Oh, second. Oh, we're seconding, sorry.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Okay. All right, I think that's all our new items. So any liaison reports? No, as I think John asked earlier, I think PTO should be starting out soon, so if you want to make contact with your various buildings and find out where the meeting.
I think the two PTOs that I liaison with, both of them have been trying to figure out, you know, what the start of school is, what it's looking for, like for staff and so on, in order to try to do something for the beginning of the year. So I'm sure after today, they'll know what the start of school is, and we don't know whether it's gonna really happen or not yet, in the way we're envisioning it.
Okay, any other liaison reports? The school year's going to start on the 16th.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's not going to change.
Okay, just wanted to
No.
make sure I had the right.
Any other liaison reports? Okay, any new items? No. I just want to mention, we just got the email tonight, they're scheduling a tri-board meeting for Monday, the 21st.
Saw that, yep.
So I think I'm going to assume it's going to be virtual, but Monday, the 21st with Select Board and Finance Committee and ourselves. So if everybody could just kind of throw that on your calendar. And then just to throw it out there in case we need to meet again next week, any dates that don't work for people, if we had to have a meeting next week, for whatever reason? Everybody fairly free, nobody on vacation?
I'm free.
Okay. Because hopefully
Yeah,
we'll have to
we don't
meet-
know.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay. All right. And we have an executive session scheduled, but anybody feel the need for any more clarification on what we talked about earlier?
No.
Okay, all right. All right, so any other public comment people have received?
I just have a question.
Yeah.
So one of the things that, that's come up, for the Chromebooks, and I should have mentioned it in technology, and I apologize, so I waited until now. The very first block in that, it says if there's a technology failure or, you know, a Chromebook isn't available, the students are still responsible to be in class and they're held accountable to it. But like, again, if you actually read the document that you sign to get the
okay.
Chromebook,
I'm like, I didn't know
the
what you're
user,
talking
the use policy.
Yeah.
But I mean, are we flexible on that, or is that like written in stone? I mean, you got people with their grandparents watching kids, and if the internet goes off and they don't know how to fix it, like, are they gonna be marked absent for a class? I mean, we've talked about this a few times, but I mean, and you've said that it's really up to the teacher to kind of
Right.
use their judgment, but then we send out a document and it says, if you don't have access, you're responsible.
Let me go read that for you, and I'm
Yeah.
happy to follow up with you. But
That'd
we
be
talked about if someone has a technology failure or an issue, they need to just communicate with their teacher. So I,
Well, if they don't have internet, how are you
No,
gonna
but
email?
when they get it back, I
Yeah.
mean, they should just follow up with the teacher and say, hey, I didn't attend class today because my computer broke or internet went down or something like that. And I've always known our teachers to be understanding.
Yeah, I just don't know why we wrote it that, if we said that in the meeting, why did we write it that way?
I honestly, I will go look. I have not, I don't know what you're
Do you mind
referring
taking
to.
a look at it?
So I will look at it.
It's aggressive language, and I've heard a couple people be like, a couple of people have reached out to me and like, what is that about? Like, that's not what we said out loud.
But we've probably been sending out for the Chromebooks when we
Yeah, I will look for you.
probably
All
part of
right.
the committee,
I think it's
probably
just,
part of the committee work.
I signed the same policy last year, so
Yeah,
I think it's the
same one as last year,
standard.
but I think the circumstances are different this year, right? Like, the language hasn't changed. Maybe we just need to kind of address that.
Well,
and-
maybe the language is pre-pandemic, you know.
Yeah,
I'll look at it.
thank you.
All right, anything else?
So someone had a question around, if they're not using a school-issued device, are there any software services or requirements that will need to be put on their home devices in order to be able to participate?
No, just Google.
Google.
Just Google?
And Google's, yeah, through the, it's
No
web-based.
antivirus, any of that?
So,
Not on a home computer.
Google's, it's web.
Well, you're bringing it on a,
web.
on a school network, right?
No, if someone's working at home on their own device, is
Oh,
there
at
anything they
home.
need
I
to
apologize.
download, like
Oh,
software-wise?
yeah, I got you, I'm tracking.
If they bring their personal device into school, though, would it need to be, would it need some kind of reconfiguration so that they can access certain things?
No, but they're gonna join our network,
Yes.
so they're gonna be in our filtering.
Okay, great.
Okay.
But
all
no,
right.
they wouldn't have to, but this is just if someone happened to be at home.
Got it.
There's no special software you have to download or anything.
Great,
so,
thank you.
so that's the same question I asked, so if a student brings their own device to school.
Yeah.
Okay, there has to be nothing, no access denials or whatever,
No,
nothing
they're
like
gonna
that.
join our network as a
Okay.
guest, but they're gonna be filtered through our guest network.
All right,
But they don't have to install anything or, no special software or anything like that.
okay.
All right, any other comments you've received from the public? Okay, all right, so I believe that would wrap up the meeting, so I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
I second.
All in favor? Aye. Great, nice meeting, good job.